It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201, The Black Sea Crisis between Tsarist Russia and the Ottoman Empire. Recently, the potential crisis between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire has attracted the attention of the whole of Europe. It is considered to be one of the most serious crises since 1856. The outside world is worried that the Russian Empire will invade the Bessarabia region in the north of the Ottoman Empire, so the United Kingdom, the French Empire, the Austrian Empire and other countries have begun to coordinate and conduct diplomatic coordination with the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. On March 25, 1865, Alexander II of the Russian Empire delivered a speech entitled On the History of the Russian Empire in the Black Sea to 200,000 citizens in St. Petersburg Square of the Russian Empire. He said that the Russian Empire began to rule the Bessarabia region in 1812, but after the defeat in the Crimean War in 1856, it was forced to cede the region to the Ottoman Empire. The Russian Empire has never been a loser, and he promised that he would not let the Russian Empire swallow this bitter fruit. This publication was considered to be an attempt by the Russian Empire to gain momentum for the annexation of Bessarabia. On April Fool's Day, April 1, 1865, several countries announced on this day of laughter and joy that they had ordered their diplomats and citizens in Bessarabia to retreat to Istanbul, the capital of the Ottoman Empire in the south. On April 5, the Russian army announced that it had deployed more than 50,000 troops on the border between the Ottoman Empire's Bessarabia and Tsarist Russia, which made Europe feel that a storm was coming. The United Kingdom and the French Empire called on the Russian Empire not to invade Bessarabia, and both countries expressed their dissatisfaction with the escalation of tensions in Russia. The Austrian Empire also shouted to Russia that Vienna did not want to see tensions in the region and asked the Russian Empire to take responsible actions to ease tensions. In recent years, the Russian Empire has rarely used military actions against foreign countries. After the defeat in the Crimean War, although Crimea was taken back, the other countries were in the western part of the Black Sea, which caused the Russian Empire to suffer a lot of losses. This made the Russian Empire's dream of entering the Mediterranean from the south even more difficult to achieve, especially Britain and France were very vigilant about this. Now, as the national strength has slowly recovered after 10 years of precipitation, this time Alexander II actually made such a grand speech to the citizens of the Russian Empire in the capital of the Russian Empire, expressing his dissatisfaction with the humiliating Paris Peace Treaty, and today he deployed 50,000 troops on the Russian-Ottoman border. His ultimate goal is obvious. On April 8, Queen Victoria approached Gorchakov, the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of the Russian Empire, who was invited to London. Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston then held a face-to-face meeting with Gorchakov. The British Empire tried to mediate the crisis between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. When the two discussed the Treaty of Paris, Gorchakov said, "The Ottoman Empire must return Bessarabia to the Russian Empire and abide by the pre-1856 border. Based on this premise, otherwise, the people of the Russian Empire will not have a good impression of them." On April 9, Sultan Abdulaziz I of the Ottoman Empire said in an exclusive interview with the European Times that he also did not like the Treaty of Paris, because in his opinion, this peace treaty actually recognized that the Crimean Peninsula belonged to the Russian Empire. However, whether he liked it or not was his business. The Bessarabia region was the territory of the Ottoman Empire, which was recognized by all countries. The Russian Empire must recognize this and there was no other option. The declaration of Sultan Abdulaziz I and the statement of Alexander II caused an uproar in the outside world. It was considered to reflect the worldview of the two countries' top leaders and their firm attitude of not giving in or compromising with Bessarabia. In recent years, the low-key attitude of the Russian Empire has made European countries almost forget the existence of the most powerful country in Europe. The Ottoman Empire, a great Asian and European power that is not recognized by Europe, is the same. However, with the current dispute between the two countries, European countries have to accept the reality that any disturbance between the two countries can disturb the peaceful life of Europeans, and the balance of power on the European continent will be broken. The destructive power formed is definitely unbearable for all Western European countries. In particular, The countries adjacent to the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire began to worry, fearing that the two countries would start a war again and affect them. However, the statements of the two countries have caused a subtle change in the previous belligerent countries, Britain, France and Italy. The top leaders of various countries are also well aware of this. Now that the Russian Empire has been suppressed back to the area north of the Black Sea by the last defeat, it seems that all countries no longer have the same position on urgency as before 1853. The French Empire is different from the British Empire. Because before 1860, Britain actually forced Napoleon III to transfer the Suez Canal to them, which made France resentful, and Napoleon III was criticized in France for this. As France's sphere of influence there was driven away, France even encountered embarrassment in the eastern Mediterranean, because they actually found that after 1860, it became the territory of the Ottoman Empire and Britain. In the central part, with the rise of the Kingdom of Italy, which was originally supported by France to fight against the Ottoman Empire, it was snatched away by Britain and became its ally, so that France was also driven away in the central Mediterranean, because Libya in the south became a colony of Italy. Therefore, it has caused confusion among the French. Who is France's number one opponent? If Napoleon III could have jointly dealt with the Crimean War launched by the Tsarist Russia in 1853 with up to 300,000 people without regret, then even if he sent 30,000 people now, he would be spit on by the French, because France has no interests there. Especially the recent escalation of the crisis between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, and the aggressiveness of the Russian Empire, and the extremely nervous attitude of Britain, made France more certain that, relatively speaking, even if the Russian Empire defeated the Ottoman Empire in the Black Sea and seized the Mediterranean outlet, Britain's losses would be much higher than France. In this case, why should France, which originally did not have much territory there, join in the fun? Therefore, this time, Napoleon III of France did not follow up except to call on all countries to calm down, because he knew that this public opinion base no longer existed in Paris. Unlike him, the Austrian Empire led by Joseph I was very nervous. If Bessarabia was taken by someone, then the border between the Austrian Empire and the Russian Empire, which was originally only in the northern part of Austria, might be taken by the Russian Empire along with Bessarabia. If the Russian Empire succeeded in invading the narrow northern part of the Romanian Principality under the Ottoman Empire, then the Austrian Empire would also face the potential threat of the Russian Empire in the east. Almost half of the border of the Austrian Empire is connected with the Russian Empire, which invisibly increases the number of borders that need to be protected in the dispute between Austria and the Russian Empire. Therefore, Joseph I Alexander. In this regard, he naturally stood on the side of Britain. We disagree with Alexander II's statement. We believe that the current status quo should be maintained rather than destroyed. The Austrian Empire insists that all parties concerned in the Black Sea exercise restraint. He even warned Alexander II of Tsarist Russia, be careful of the recurrence of the Crimean War from 1853 to 1856. William IV. Joseph I's statement actually means that the Russian Empire continues to increase conflicts among the countries in Southeast Europe, especially the relevant parties there. The Russian Empire's tough style of behavior has inadvertently destroyed the strategic buffer and cover for other countries as third parties, including major powers such as the Austrian Empire and Britain. This is unacceptable to them, so they are very opposed. But for Prussia, Sweden, Italy, and even the French Empire, it is beneficial, because there are opponents between them and the Russian Empire. The Russian Empire is now provoking incidents in the Black Sea, which can effectively divert Sweden from the pressure of the Russian Empire. Prussia has benefited greatly from this, but Austria will have to face the threats from powerful countries at both ends. Italy's obsession with Venice, however, has made them dissatisfied with Austria, and has also benefited a lot from the possible disputes between the Russian Empire and Austria. As for us in the Netherlands, William IV said to Haysbeth van, objectively, it is very beneficial, and that's why I am promoting development in this area. Yes, this time, Alexander I of Russia dared to march into the southern Bessarabia region at this time. In fact, it was under the order of William IV that the Dutch intelligence agency provided relevant intelligence to his counterparts in the Russian Empire to embolden Alexander II, because the intelligence provided by the Netherlands was so important that Alexander II was willing to take risks for it. If they miss this opportunity, they may have to wait another 10 years. William IV thought that in history, The Russian Empire took back the Bessarabia region again. It was not until Alexander II launched a war against the Ottoman Empire in 1878 and won that it forced the Ottoman Empire to sign the Treaty of San Stefano and then ruled it again. Hey Spetvan, Your Majesty, what do we gain by doing this? Until now, he still couldn't understand His Majesty's thoughts, even though he had been working hard for this matter recently. William IV said proudly, "Don't you think that Britain has been too pampered in recent years except in South Africa?" Seeing that Hayes Betvan and others showed their approval, William IV said, "Britain is too powerful. Although it has suffered heavy losses in South Africa, it has not been seriously damaged. The Netherlands and Britain have huge territories in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. We can't watch them gradually form a stable rule there, just like they won't watch us develop in East India and Australia. Therefore, we need a strategic window period, and this opportunity is that we need to create an enemy that distracts Britain. And this enemy must be the Russian Empire to the north of the Indian continent and the one that is determined to appear in the middle of the earth." Chapter 202 The Third Power of the German Confederation. 1865, when all countries were worried that the Russian Empire might launch an attack on Bessarabia, thus causing another war in the Black Sea, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saxony, Bosch, was successfully elected as the new Speaker of the German Confederation with the support of Hanover, the fourth largest country in the German Confederation, and many small countries in the Confederation. At the press conference for his victory, he announced that the Kingdom of Saxony and the Kingdom of Hanover would form an alliance to form a third force within the German Confederation to counter the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia. "I am dissatisfied with the fact that Austria and Prussia want to leave the German Confederation alone and negotiate to obtain these two results on the issue of Schleswig and Holstein. I will personally question Prime Minister Bismarck and Austrian Prime Minister Archduke Rainer Ferdinand at the German Confederation Union Parliament to be held in the coming week, in order to ask the two countries to change their disunited attitude towards the German Confederation." With his tough speech, the two principalities of Prussia and Austria changed their colors and expressed their dissatisfaction with him. But what annoyed the two countries was that his speech won the support of many small countries, which made the two countries reluctantly accept the sudden appearance of a third party in the German Confederation. The countries that were not aware of the German Confederation were very surprised by this, so they began to investigate the past of this Bosch. In 1849, he served as the foreign minister of King John I of the Kingdom of Saxony under the German Confederation. In May of the same year, Bosch, on behalf of the Kingdom of Saxony, protested against Prussia's suppression of the people of Dresden, thereby opening up close diplomatic relations between Saxony and Prussia. In 1853, he became Saxony's Minister of the Interior. He sought to develop the Saxon economy through moderate internal reforms. As his earlier foreshadowing and the relationship with Prussia developed rapidly, he took advantage of Prussia, and the Saxon economy developed rapidly and was supported by the people of Saxony. Although he sometimes naturally leaned towards the economic power Prussia when facing the competition between Prussia and Austria for economic reasons, after becoming the Prime Minister of Saxony in 1858, his foreign policy made him more and more inclined to Austria, so he had a sharp confrontation with the Prussian Prime Minister Bismarck. Just like this time in the election of the German Confederation, there were only Bismarck and Archduke Rainer Ferdinand, but he intervened and used the small countries' concerns about their own interests being swallowed up by the two major countries as a weapon to win many small states in the German Confederation in one fell swoop, as a third force between Austria and Prussia. It can be said that it was the most popular at the time. The German Confederation is located in the heart of Europe. It inherits the land transportation routes between Eastern Europe and Western Europe, Southern Europe and Northern Europe. At the same time, its strategic location cannot be ignored by all countries. Originally, when Austria and Prussia were almost the only ones who had the final say in the German Confederation, the other countries had not said anything. However, this time a third party appeared, which broke the impossibility for the other countries to intervene in the internal affairs of the German Confederation. The unexpected rise of Saxe-Piest finally made the other countries find the gap. So the countries expressed their opinions one after another. Among them, Britain, which had close relations with the Kingdom of Hanover, took the lead in expressing its opinions. Small countries are also countries. We hope that the German Confederation can be more democratic. At the same time, we also hope that when there are differences in the governance of Schleswig and Holstein, the countries can resolve them in a peaceful way in the parliament. The statement of British Foreign Secretary Russell showed that Britain supported the expansion of Bosch. However, his support made many small countries in the German Confederation begin to support Bosch. And with Britain in the lead, how could other countries fall behind? France also expressed its support for the democratic tendency within the German Confederation, hoping that Prussia and Austria could tolerate the rise of dissent. Prime Minister Olivier said that this would provide substantial help in promoting the governance of the German Confederation. Later, Dutch Foreign Minister Huysbert van expressed his opinion. The Netherlands stated that as a principality directly under the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Luxembourg has always been independent, and stated that when facing the three forces of the German Confederation, Luxembourg chose neutrality. At the same time, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that the Duchy of Luxembourg, owned by William IV, will continue to be neutral in the European situation and will not participate in any foreign actions of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Duchy of Luxembourg expressed its neutrality. This was recognized by the surrounding French Empire, the Kingdom of Prussia, the Duchy of Lorraine, and the Duchy of Belgium. At the same time, other non-bordering countries of the German Confederation also expressed their recognition of the neutrality of the Duchy of Luxembourg. Even Britain, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Tsarist Russia, and other Ottoman countries recognized this position. As a result, Luxembourg became the fourth neutral country recognized by Europe on the European continent after Switzerland and Sweden, which were confirmed in 1815, and Belgium, which became independent in 1830. The fragmentation of the German Confederation allowed the German power to form a united front against all countries in the south, which made Britain, France, Russia, the Ottoman Empire, and other countries feel relieved. After all, the German Confederation, which had two major countries, Austria and Prussia, plus many small countries, was too strong. Especially with the rise of Prussia, the economy promoted the economic and industrial development of the countries in the Northern German Confederation. The countries in the south also rushed to establish the Southern German Customs Union under the promotion of Austria to counter the North German Customs Union led by Prussia. Although the development of the north and the south was unbalanced, the effects were similar for other countries, especially the pressure on Tsarist Russia. Therefore, it has always been to suppress Prussia and support Austria. After the Crimean War, Tsarist Russia and Austria fell out, so for more than 10 years, they supported Prussia to suppress Austria. Therefore, the German Confederation was more fragmented at this time, which was completely in line with the core interests of the Tsarist Russian Empire. Alexander II was even more confident in the plan that was about to be launched in the south. William IV, who was in the Royal Palace of Amsterdam, was checking with the heads of his intelligence agency, Mackay Sean and Bill Charlie. According to Your Majesty's instructions, Van Gogh has been arranged to travel to France, Italy, Britain and other countries to learn about art. As for Thomas Edison, Bill Charlie looked strange at first, and then exclaimed, he actually obtained 2 patents in less than a year after arriving in the Netherlands in 1863. At the end of 1863, he invented an automatic recording machine, and in January 1865, he invented an ordinary printing press, which immediately caused a sensation among the top management of the William Group. The William Group even bought the patent for £40,000, and at the same time began to build 2 factories in Rotterdam and Sydney, Australia, to produce this printing press. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203, Civil Unrest in Germany caused by the Prussian-Austrian Treaty. The development of the Industrial Revolution cannot be separated from the support of funds. In the Netherlands, there are 3 main sources of funds for industry. They are the accumulation of the industrial sector itself, the transformation of commercial capital into industrial capital, and foreign investment. However, the third project is currently very unstable for the Netherlands, and the accumulation of the industrial sector itself is also weak. Therefore, although the Netherlands has developed rapidly because it followed the wave of the British Industrial Revolution before, he knows that from preparation to the Second Revolution, he wants to achieve a leading position, and the transformation of commercial capital into industrial capital is particularly important. With the development of the market and the economy, commercial capital began to turn to direct control of commodity production, which means that commercial capital began to gradually transform into industrial capital. and this is also based on the purpose and premise of maximizing profits. Among them, the Netherlands, like the United Kingdom, uses commercial means to control industrial production and raw material production in commodities such as textiles and spices. The Netherlands began to order or purchase products from scattered small commodity merchants from the global coachmen, resell and process them, and make profits from them. As the Dutch market and the European market for Dutch goods continued to expand, the Dutch workshops of a few people gradually became small factories with dozens of people, and even included large factories with hundreds or thousands of people such as the William Group. Therefore, the Dutch economy has developed rapidly. I remember that in the report of 1861, the exchange rate at that time was £1 equals $5 equals 25 Dutch guilders. In 1861, the northern United States had a population of 22 million, about £300 million, and an average annual income of about $90 and £18 per person. The UK's GDP in the same period was £1.5 billion, 30 million people, and £50 per capita. In the same period, the Netherlands had a population of 6 million, 6 billion Dutch guilders, $1.2 billion, £240 million, and £40 per capita. William IV looked at the latest economy compiled by Bill Charley. It only listed the total economic volume and per capita of each country. William IV compared it. In this report data of various countries in 1864, the economy of the northern United States regressed by 5%, leaving only £240 million, but the per capita did not change. He looked at unification. Unification seemed to have known that there would be such a question, and said, "Your Majesty, that is because the population of both the North and the South of the United States has also dropped sharply due to the war. At the same time, because of the war, some people who had immigrated to the United States in the past chose to leave and return to the European continent or South America to develop during the 3-year war. Therefore, the economic recession and population reduction rate are the same, which makes their per capita output value not much different." This government report from Walper, the Secretary of the Interior of the Confederate States of America, is the real situation data. Hearing this, William IV was silent. According to the report in front of him, compared with 1861, after 3 years of development, the domestic industrial economy of Britain developed rapidly in 1864. Moreover, with the effect of governing overseas colonies such as the Indian subcontinent, the mining industry in South Africa injected economic vitality into Britain. Therefore, Britain's GDP rose from £1.5 billion to £2 billion in 3 years, an increase of 20%. The population is 32 million, and the population has increased by 6.6%. The per capita GDP has reached about £60, an increase of about 20%. This makes the total GDP of Britain continue to lead the world. However, although the Netherlands can only look up to it in terms of total volume, the growth rate is the highest in Europe, increasing by 46%, from the original £240 million to £350.4 million. The population has increased from the original 6 million people. After growth, the return of overseas population, and the surge in newborns, the current Dutch population has reached 9 million, an increase of 50%. The per capita income is still £40. Seeing this, I am already very satisfied. After all, with 3 million people in 3 years, the population has increased by half, and it is thankful that the economy has not fallen. Look at the combination of East and West Germany in the future. Germany's economic per capita GDP has dropped sharply. But this is the Dutch, and other Far Eastern natives and African blacks are actually not comparable. The Far East is better. Under the guidance of William IV since 1857, the scale of development of Jakarta's central city has expanded. Jakarta has become the largest commercial center in Southeast Asia and the largest distribution center for international trade commodities in the Far East. The transportation there is convenient, connecting the entire Pacific and Indian Oceans from north to south. Therefore, the GDP of Jakarta, a city with only 700,000 people, is as high as £20 per capita. Of course, it is driven by nearly half of the Dutch people there. This population and economic scale are enough to compare with Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. It makes it the third largest city under the jurisdiction of the Netherlands. Of course, with the rapid rise of Sydney, Melbourne and other almost pure Dutch cities in Australia. In a few years, It is not surprising that they will soon be replaced by them in the south. However, although it is not as large and per capita as Britain and France at present, he thought that even Edison, the future leader of the electrical industry, is now in the Netherlands. Will the Netherlands counterattack with the help of this inventor in the future? Many people are very afraid of people of color. I believe that in this world, perhaps only I can tap into their economy. They will become a protective film for the Netherlands and help the Netherlands reach the top of the world. Your Majesty, will the current civil unrest in the German Confederation cause their civil unrest and then affect France? Napoleon III and Olivier were also discussing the movements of their northern neighbors. Napoleon III said with a smile, "The war in Mexico has been going smoothly recently, thanks to the United States and the North. It is them that the Confederacy of the South has no time to care about our further advancement in Mexico, but instead tries to please us in order to deal with the North." This may be something Lincoln did not expect. Olivier also said excitedly, "As long as Mexico is taken, France's position in the entire Americas will definitely be completely renewed. Our position in America is enough to challenge Britain. Moreover, Britain is now facing the Netherlands in the west and Canada on the Alaska Peninsula. The southern leaders, such as the Lincoln government, are squeezed, and it is obvious that the situation is definitely not good. Your Majesty, do you think that Viscount Palmerston will take the risk and unite with the South to send troops from Canada to help the Confederacy of the South?" When Napoleon III heard what Olivier said, he quickly ran to the side of the map and his eyes fell on the map of North America. When he saw that Canada and the north of the United States were actually allied for thousands of kilometers, he was moved. Obviously, if he were Queen Victoria, he might as well take this good opportunity to go south to the Northern Federation and make a profit. However, will Britain do this? If not, what is the purpose? Napoleon III didn't know, but when he thought about it, if he were Queen Victoria, he would definitely let it go. Now that the Civil War in the United States has broken out, it's time to take advantage of the opportunity. Napoleon III even wanted to replace it and do what the British should do in his opinion. On April 25, 1865, the North and South of North America fought a siege in Richmond. The Northern Federal Army led by Grant defeated the Southern Confederate Army led by Robert Lee and drove the Southern Confederacy out of the Southern capital they established. For a time, even Lincoln couldn't stay. The citizens of the Northern Federation were all overjoyed, while the South was generally depressed. Is this an imbalance? Many people don't know how to answer. However, Britain told everyone very clearly that this touched Britain's balanced diplomacy with America, and therefore opposed the oppression of the North against the South. On April 30, Britain officially announced that it would continue to sell guns to the Confederate States of the South. At the same time, the British Army sent more than 3,000 brave British soldiers from the mainland to land in Texas to safeguard the sovereignty of the South from invasion by the North. However, Britain's actions were condemned by the North led by Lincoln, and severely warned the British Army to leave the South, otherwise they would bear the consequences. On April 18, 1865, the Prussian-Austrian Treaty was signed in Berlin by the Prime Ministers of Prussia and Austria. The contract stipulated that Austria obtained the control of Schleswig, and Prussia obtained the rule of Holstein. The two countries held a grand signing ceremony in Berlin. When everyone looked at it, 3 copies of the contract were finally exchanged in their hands, and another copy was also deposited in the German Confederation Parliament. Its signing represents the official end of Schleswig and Holstein. However, many people understand that this is just the beginning. There will definitely be more bloody storms around these two places in the future. Saxon Prime Minister Bosch stood up to oppose the document of the two countries. He said that this was unacceptable. As members of the German Confederation, the two countries should not try to bypass the German Confederation Parliament to go it alone. This was a contempt for other countries. As Bosch stood up, Hanover and Saxony expressed dissatisfaction and declared that they would not recognize the two places as belonging to Prussia and Austria, and demanded a parliamentary meeting for a vote by all members. But how could Prussia and Austria agree? So the two countries began to think about their respective economic territories and explained to all countries that they would not give up their sovereignty. In this way, the two countries almost caused dissatisfaction among their allies in the German Confederation. Even the southern power, the Kingdom of Bavaria, expressed its willingness to contribute to the governance of Schleswig and Holstein. Austria stood up to its most important ally, Bavaria, and was very surprised. Obviously, the close relationship between the two countries began to be affected. Next, Austria found that almost all the parliamentary bills they proposed would face opposition from various countries. He took a quick look and found that almost all the oppositions were members of third-party forces. But there are also many followers who used to follow Austria, but now they are turning against it? Few people in Europe realized that the signing of this peace treaty represented the birth of a new history. William IV speculated that Prussia might launch a unification war in the future, but the process of unifying the country would be much more difficult. Because they had defeated their Austrian opponents before, the other principalities had no choice but to surrender. Now Prussia had to face a new enemy and an old enemy, which might be even more difficult for Prussia and Bismarck. Chapter 204, Britain was forced to join the war in North America? The signing of the Austro-Prussian Treaty, although in the short term it prevented Prussia and Austria from going to war over the dispute over Schleswig and Holstein, caused dissatisfaction among medium-sized powers within the German Confederation, such as the Kingdom of Bavaria, the Kingdom of Hanover, the Kingdom of Saxony, as well as Baden, Württemberg, Hesse-Kassel, Hesse-Darmstadt and other member states of the German Confederation. Surprisingly, Muhlenberg, Oldenburg and other North German states that supported Prussia, even the three cities of Hamburg, Bremen and Lübeck, did not oppose Prussia's rule over Holstein and chose to continue to support Prussia's position in the North German Confederation. This is why Austria has entered a period of disorder in its relations with its allies compared to Prussia. Viscount Palmerston looked at Queen Victoria with great concern. If this continues, Prussia will be the only powerful country in the German Confederation, and the Austrian Empire will be isolated and deserted. Although Saxony and the Hanoverian alliance seem to be a third-party force with the strength to resist the two major powers, but, Viscount Palmerston said, no matter how you look at it, it feels a little unreliable. Queen Victoria nodded and sighed. Of course, originally this third-party force, except for a few allies belonging to Prussia, more than 90% of them are Austria's original allies in the German Confederation. Now with a small Schleswig-Herzegovina, Austria has offended all these allies, and now it has become a commander without troops. The Queen's eyes turned and expressed Viscount Palmerston's concerns. Is the Viscount afraid that Prussia will take the opportunity to reap Austria's influence in the German Confederation, win over various countries, and completely replace Austria's leadership in the German state? Viscount Palmerston paused, and said with surprising concern, I am afraid that Prussia will use force. The Queen couldn't help but laugh, and said nonchalantly, how is it possible? You think too much. Will Prussia take the opportunity to send troops to those Austrian allies? No, I mean Prussia will send troops to Austria. What? The Queen stared at Viscount Palmerston's face, who was over 80 years old, in disbelief. The latter had no doubt about his calm judgment. Just when the Queen wanted to discuss with Viscount Palmerston how to deal with this hypothesis, the chief guard of the palace hurriedly walked into the Queen's office, and the telegram in his hand was trembling. The two of them couldn't help but look at it. The chief guard Lideo was beside the two. Your Majesty, just now North America has received an order from President Lincoln of North America. Because Britain's support for the Southern Confederacy violated the bottom line of the Northern Federation and caused dissatisfaction throughout the Northern Federation. In order to retaliate against Britain, the North has taken a series of retaliatory measures, and will detain and plunder British ships passing through the coastline of the Northern Federation. From now on, British ships are not allowed to dock at all ports of the Northern Federation. Bang! Queen Victoria and Viscount Palmerston's faces changed drastically. Lincoln actually ordered this? Isn't he afraid of the strong retaliation of the British Empire? Queen Victoria's face was extremely gloomy after a moment of downtime, and she said sarcastically. Viscount Palmerston always felt that something was wrong, and his brain kept working, but he couldn't find the problem. No matter what, the Lincoln government must be condemned first. Viscount Palmerston put aside his doubts and asked the Queen directly. The latter agreed with this approach. May 1, 1865. The United States of America announced a coastal embargo on Britain and passed legislation in Congress to prohibit all British goods from entering and leaving the federal territory. At the same time, in order to sanction Britain's many provocative actions to help the Southern Confederacy, the North also sanctioned all British companies that had economic and arms transactions with the South. Internally, federal legislation was passed to prohibit everyone in the country from conducting economic and military transactions with the British. Violators would face serious legal consequences. On May 2, demonstrations continued in the British Empire, and many people threatened to ask the British government to sever diplomatic ties with the Lincoln government in North America and declare war. Entrepreneurs were worried because the federal industrial products market was very important to Britain, accounting for almost 10% of Britain. Now that Britain and the Lincoln government had fallen out, the European continent was hostile to Britain again, and their industry had developed again, so they were not very eager to buy British industrial products. So if things went wrong, these companies that were beaten out of the market by the north of the United States would likely go bankrupt. Even this amount was calculated in tens of millions of pounds. These companies were naturally not philanthropists. Without a market, their factories would naturally need to downsize. Therefore, in London, large companies made a decision to lay off employees, and the number of employees fired and laid off by major companies that sold 10% of industrial products to the North American Federation exceeded 480,000 in a short period of time. This put the British government under tremendous pressure. And these 300,000 people also affected the daily lives of more than 2 million people, including the surrounding business operations and their families. Therefore, while Britain declared war on the Northern Federation and various parts of Britain, nearly 2 million people also expressed their hope that the two countries would reconcile and reach an agreement to restore life to its previous peaceful melody as soon as possible. So the streets of Britain began to show a lot of body language between the two parties, and at the same time, in the major courts, there were also scenes of accusations and counter-accusations for this. This embarrassed the cabinet of Viscount Palmerston. The predicament of Britain stunned the rulers of all over the world. Britain, which claims to be the most powerful country in the world, was actually divided by its former colonies, and was even caused such a large-scale chaos in the country by the first move of the American Federation in the north. Is this still the first power in their impression? Even the Empress Dowager C, who had just been ruling behind the curtain for a short time in the Far East, as well as Zhuo Zongtang, Zheng Gufan and Li Hongzhang, looked at all this in disbelief. It seems that they don't believe that the British Empire, which made the Qing dynasty lose face, is so fragile, so they have other ideas. In particular, they have the idea of making friends with the American Federation in North America. After all, if they can make the powerful Britain like this, then in their opinion, the strength of the American Federation should not be weak. At least in their opinion, it should not be weaker than the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which is now developing capital in the Qing dynasty and is attacking cities and pawns. After all, I have never heard of the Netherlands doing this head-on with Britain, but the United States has done it. Doesn't this prove that the United States is stronger? However, just when the leaders of the Qing dynasty had this idea, they were stunned by the news that the British government had declared war on the United States. They shook their heads and said, "The United States is worthy of being a country that has only been established for less than 100 years. It is still too young. It is still the Netherlands that conforms to the doctrine of the mean, and it is reasonable to make money in a low-key manner." On May 5, 1865, the cabinet government of Viscount Palmerston announced that Britain officially declared war on the government of the United States and would send warships to attack the maritime trade of the United States. At the same time, 30,000 troops will be sent to eastern Virginia to help the Confederate States there recapture the capital Richmond. Chapter 205, Europe's Troublemaker? Britain joins the war in North America? This is the recent headline news in European newspapers. Since Britain lost more than 100,000 people in the South African War in 1863, it has rarely used military force against other countries. Even if there is a mutiny among the natives in the colonies, Britain often uses the local native army to suppress it, to prevent damage to its own army. Therefore, the British military has been very quiet in the past 2 years. But now the Lincoln government's punishment of Britain has touched upon Britain's gunboat diplomacy and commercial governance structure. Even because of Lincoln's ban on the sale of British industrial products, hundreds of thousands of British jobs have been lost and the lives of millions of people have been affected. With Britain's hegemony, it is natural that it will not remain indifferent. Britain sent troops to fight in an attempt to force the Lincoln government to withdraw this decision and become Britain's dumping market again. This is the purpose of the British government. Although many people believe that the Tory party is behind this street protest in the UK, Disraeli, the new leader of the Tory party, took this opportunity to attack the Whig party's ability to govern the country in the British Parliament, and its foreign policy has been too weak recently, causing even the small United States to dare to touch the tiger whiskers of the British Empire. Anyway, Disraeli presented the domestic discontent to Viscount Palmerston in Parliament. With the Tories' participation in opposing the foreign policies of the Whig cabinet government in various places, the Tories' public opinion in the UK has risen rapidly recently. Many people predict that if Viscount Palmerston's cabinet government does not make changes and regain public opinion, the British general election in September this year is likely to allow the Tories to win. Then everyone saw that the Whig Party, which had a sense of crisis, finally sent troops to fight in the Northern Federation. However, the Tories would naturally not give up and wait for the Whig Party to return from suppressing the rebellion there. Therefore, during the period of 4 months before the general election, the Tories began to bombard the various policies of Viscount Palmerston's cabinet government in an attempt to maintain the public opinion that is now favorable to the Tories. However, what the British, including Viscount Palmerston and Disraeli, did not know was that they were falling into a conspiracy carefully prepared for them. When this conspiracy succeeded, all walks of life in Britain became the object of ridicule in Europe. On May 15, 1865, when the domestic situation in Britain was in chaos and troops were sent to North America to divert public dissatisfaction, King William IV of the Netherlands set foot on the territory of the Russian Empire for the first time and made a short visit to St. Petersburg. In terms of the number of large states, population and area, the Austrian Empire has an advantage. But in terms of military strength, Prussia is obviously stronger than the other side. The person in front of Alexander II was King William IV of the Netherlands. The two blocked the left and right, leaving only the two. Alexander II adhered to his predecessors and was familiar with Dutch, so the conversation between the two was very natural, without the participation of a third party. William IV showed respect to the Russian emperor, who was born in 1818 and inherited the throne in 1856. He said, "Now the total strength of Prussia has reached 630,000, while Austria's strength and heavy artillery can only reach more than 580,000. However, if Prussia attacks Austria, then Austria will be in the inner position, and its cavalry and artillery are superior to Prussia in quantity, and it is convenient for mobile operations." William IV looked up at Alexander II and said, "Therefore, in my opinion, the Austrian authorities can only passively defend and wait for the opponent's attack. Even Joseph I and others will think of making up for their shortcomings with their strengths, so as to delay the progress of the war, expand their domestic forces, accumulate strength, and then choose the right time to counterattack, and then defeat the invading Prussia with superior forces in one fell swoop." Alexander II looked at the Prussian and Austrian war deduced by the two on the map, and his eyes kept lingering on it. Finally, he set his sights on Bessarabia in the east of the Austrian Empire, and Romania over there, and his eyes were hot. William IV saw this scene. In fact, he was still very envious. In fact, according to his idea, the Netherlands could actually get some territory in Eastern Europe or even the Eastern Mediterranean. But the population of the Netherlands is too small. Managing the current territory already seems to be tight on population, not to mention putting people in the most complicated regions such as Eastern Europe. When he thought of the Balkan Peninsula, even if it was a chaotic situation 150 years later, he gave up this heart. Whoever loves can go. In fact, the Netherlands now looks small in population, and other major countries have large populations, but thinking of the major wars that will follow, the French Empire and Prussia, later the German Empire, the Austrian Empire and the Russian Empire, which were affected by the local wars, suffered huge population losses in one war after another, which made William IV feel less pressured. This is why he moved the Dutch citizens to the Far East, away from the local area. This is the best way to protect population growth. While various countries suffered rapid losses in the war in the millions, the Netherlands was as far away from the European continent as the United States, which was calm after the Civil War, and the population continued to grow. He believed that in 2 generations at most, it would be able to catch up with the scale of populous countries such as Britain, France and Germany. One rises while the other falls. This was also the strategy he had formulated with the Dutch Privy Council. European countries can fight if they like, and if they don't like it, the Dutch government will force you to join the fight. That's right, William IV wanted to turn the Netherlands into the role of a troublemaker in world politics like Britain in the previous life, and instead let Britain take advantage of it again and again and make its own affairs bigger, and let the British eat the dust. William IV's thoughts were only a momentary thing. He followed Alexander II's gaze and smiled. In fact, the Netherlands has always felt that the Russian Empire is too conservative in its territory. Your Majesty should be more proactive. I think that the Russian Empire should have a free access to the Mediterranean and even in the Indian Ocean, instead of being limited to the northern section of the Black Sea after the Crimean War. Your Majesty, do you think I am right? Right? Alexander I suddenly found William IV in front of him very interesting. This person knew what he was thinking. The Russian Empire does think that it would be more convenient for the South to have a port for the Russian Empire, but you know that the British will not agree to it. Britain is busy with its own affairs, so how can it care about the Russian Empire's affairs? William IV said. Alexander II, what do you mean? William IV, because according to the intelligence we have learned, just as we have just deduced, Prussia is going to launch an attack. Alexander II was shocked and looked at William IV in disbelief. The latter nodded heavily. Alexander II's mind became active. In this case, we should consider it. Afterwards, the two had a secret negotiation, which was not known to outsiders. On May 20, 1865, the Battle of Richmond took place. Britain participated in the war for the first time. The North retreated step by step and was forced to let the South take back their capital. Just when the British were relieved, when they were ready to show off their glorious moment, the situation on the European continent shocked them. It turned out that Prussia attacked the third-party forces of Austria, and its first target was the Kingdom of Hanover. In just 3 days, Hanover was attacked by Prussia from the east and south, and more than half of its territory was occupied. Europe was in an uproar. Chapter 206 Shocking. Hanover-Saxony was destroyed. 1865, the Kingdom of Hanover was attacked by the Kingdom of Prussia, which was also a member of the German Confederation, and the east and south quickly fell. William IV was still visiting Tsarist Russia, and on this day he was invited to St. Petersburg University to give a speech on the situation in Europe. Various news from the Prussian attack made him speak about the internal struggles in the German state, which attracted much attention. Forced to fight on two fronts, the army of the Kingdom of Hanover divided its forces into two routes and formed two armies, of which 30,000 people were organized into the Southern Army to deal with the Prussian army in the Rhine province. The 30,000 people in the east formed the Eastern Army, which was used to deal with Prussia's westward route. At the same time, Hanover began to expand 30,000 new soldiers because of Prussia's invasion. This new recruit team was reinforced by King George V of Hanover in the Eastern Theater, under the unified command of General Bed, and quickly resisted Prussia's westward invasion on the eastern front of Hanover. On the Prussian side, the actual commander of the war was General Moltke, the chief of the general staff. According to the operational plan formulated by his leadership, he used advanced railway transportation to implement strategic transportation and used advanced telegraph means to conduct unified command, thus overcoming the difficulties brought about by long-distance maneuvers and outward operations. In a very short period of time, more than 100,000 troops and 200 artillery pieces were concentrated in the western border area of Mecklenburg, an ally within the German Confederation, and even extended the troops to the Free City of Hamburg in the north, which has always been pro-Prussian. With the entire east occupied, the Kingdom of Hanover turned to its allies for help. The Kingdom of Saxony condemned Prussia's brutal invasion of members of the Federation at the Vienna Parliament, but other members chose to remain silent after Austria did not respond. At this moment, they realized that the great power really cannot be insulted. On June 4, 1865, Prussia took over the Kingdom of Hanover at lightning speed in just half a month, which immediately shocked the world. In just 1 week, the Prussian military completely paralyzed and occupied the overall military capabilities of a middle-class power like the Kingdom of Hanover. Although it was a medium-sized power, it was really scary. The second week was a quick sweep of the Hanoverian army, leaving only sporadic combat power in various places. The battle was decided, and General Moltke's mission was accomplished. In less than 2 weeks, Prussia destroyed and occupied a medium-sized country with a standing army of 100,000 and an industrial system. Therefore, Prussia's current deduction speed and war military form have become deduction cases for military departments and military academies of various countries. It has inspired the thinking and inspiration of generals and kings of various countries on war, which is comparable to the Crimean War and the Napoleonic Wars. It has important implications for more similar strategic wars and anti-invasion wars in the future. If the Prussian-Danish War was a small test, then the Prussian and Hanover Wars made Prussia show its strength. It staged a real 2-week war teaching for the whole world. At the military council held in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Chief of the General Staff Mark Rudd, in accordance with the requirements of William IV, used this war as a teaching material and required all military leaders to learn from the Prussian War, so that when the Netherlands faces such opponents in the future, it will not repeat the Hanover two-week national destruction in the Netherlands. On May 25, 1865, Austria seemed to be competing with Prussia in invading Hanover, and also showed its ambition to attack the Kingdom of Saxony. They launched an attack. However, compared with Prussia, Austria was blocked at the beginning. Compared with Prussia, Austria's unsuccessful invasion was exchanged for fierce attacks from members of the German Confederation. It is notorious. All European countries stared at the development of this strange situation within the German Confederation with wide eyes. Although the British Foreign Office has repeatedly called on Prussia and Austria to calm down and not to destroy the imbalance in Germany, the two countries will not listen now. On June 10, Austria saw that Prussia only used 100,000 soldiers and paid less than 10,000 soldiers to take Hanover in half a month. Therefore, under the unyielding character of Austrian Emperor Joseph I, Austria used the human sea tactics and sent more than 200,000 troops to Saxony, and finally captured the Kingdom of Saxony on June 20. It took more than 4 weeks, and the number of troops was more than double the 100,000 when Prussia invaded Hanover, reaching 200,000. In fact, Saxony was behind the Kingdom of Hanover in terms of military strength and comprehensive national strength, so Austria's combat effectiveness was quite inferior to Prussia's. After Prussia and Austria completed their respective wars, the two countries signed the Vienna Treaty in Berlin on June 25. The treaty stipulated that Prussia annexed the Kingdom of Hanover and officially annexed the Kingdom of Hanover on July 1. So far, from 1814, when Hanover was promoted to a kingdom, to 1865, when it was annexed by Prussia, the Kingdom of Hanover had 5 kings, and the Kingdom of Hanover, which lasted for a total of 51 years, was destroyed. In this treaty, the Kingdom of Saxony-Prussia was also recognized by Prussia as an Austrian annexed territory, but Prussia suggested that the annexation date of Austria should start on August 1. Although Austria was surprised that Prussia's request was inexplicable, it still agreed to this date. Book friends can guess Prussia's intention. After the annexation of the Kingdom of Hanover, George V never gave up the throne, nor did he recognize any actions of Prussia. He had fled to the sea before Prussia completely occupied it, and his destination was London. When Prussia signed a treaty with Austria, he called on other European powers in London to intervene in the occupation of the Kingdom of Hanover by Prussia. But this was in vain, because even Britain, Hanover's closest ally, chose to make only verbal appeals. They had no intention of intervening, and even had no intention of sending troops to participate. This made George V feel cold and realized the cruelty of reality. The same is true for the royal family of Saxony. However, the royal family of Saxony did not flee to London, but to Paris across the English Channel. With the escape of the former members of the two royal families, the two medium-sized countries perished. This made all countries finally realize that the reason why great powers are called great powers, and the reason why the 6 major European powers are called great powers, is not just because of the decent status given by various countries after the Vienna Conference, but the display of comprehensive national strength. Just like the 5 permanent members of the Security Council in later generations, they not only have zero power, but their historical and current capabilities are the best in the world. This is the confidence of all countries. With the fall of these two countries, the German Confederation was in turmoil. The most surprising thing is that some small member countries within the German Confederation began to enter a period of panic. The problem is that when the war started, everyone in the big and small countries felt that the game of big fish eating small fish seemed to have begun. Faced with the ambitions revealed by Prussia and Austria, what should the many small countries in Germany do? You can't just sit and wait for death, right? Chapter 207. The Russian Empire is no longer lonely. Starting from June 4, 1865, the Kingdom of Prussia invaded the Kingdom of Hanover and completely occupied it in just 2 weeks, which shocked the world. At the same time, the Austrian Empire also occupied the Kingdom of Saxony on June 20 after 4 weeks. This seems to have put the European continent into the jungle of big fish eating small fish and small fish eating shrimp. As the so-called shrimp, the small countries of the German Confederation are naturally unwilling to be swallowed up by 2 big countries. On June 28, 1865, King Ludwig I of the Kingdom of Bavaria, a member of the German Confederation and the 3rd largest country, announced, In order to oppose the two major hegemonic policies within the German Confederation, the 19-year-old king who had just ascended the throne last year announced that the Kingdom of Bavaria would form a new West German federal state with the Duchy of Nördlingen, the Duchy of Bohemia, the Duchy of Westphalia, the Duchy of Baden, and the two major duchies of Hesse in the north and south. The establishment of this federal state marked the entry of Germany into the era of the three powers, but because Ludwig II's mother was Princess Maria of Prussia and his grandmother came from the Austrian royal family, the neutral policy of the Kingdom of Bavaria was questioned. But it's better to have it than not, isn't it? On July 1st, just as the Kingdom of Prussia and the Austrian Empire revealed that they would oppose the establishment of this federation and were preparing to send a large army to attack the two newly established West German federal states, Napoleon III broke his silence. He met with Ludwig II in Paris and declared that the French Empire recognized the West German federal state and demanded that Austria and Prussia stop creating chaos and war in the German Confederation. All countries should sit down for negotiations to resolve various concerns. Obviously, Napoleon II's words resonated with many people. Württemberg, Baden and other countries have expressed their willingness to accept Napoleon II's mediation and affirmed France's role as a mediator. For a time, Napoleon II became the stabilizer of the European continent, and Britain came late, expressing its willingness to cooperate with the French Empire and put pressure on Prussia and Austria not to act rashly. Perhaps it was the intervention of France and the pressure from Britain that was too great. In short, both Prussia and Austria chose to stop marching. In just over a month, the German Confederation was torn apart. The biggest beneficiaries were naturally the Kingdom of Prussia and the Austrian Empire. They seized a large area of land and increased the area of the country. Among them, Prussia finally opened up a direct outlet to the Atlantic Ocean. From then on, Prussian warships finally no longer had to pass through the Øresund Strait controlled by Denmark and Sweden in the north and south, and could carry out large-scale naval construction at the outlets of the Weser River and the Elbe River. It will have an inestimable benefit to the future naval construction and self-protection depth of Prussia. Austria's annexation of Saxony naturally increased its own power, but because Austria originally had many ethnic groups, now with the addition of Saxony, Austria originally accounted for less than 40% of the country, and the proportion will decrease again because of Saxony's joining. This may not have a positive effect on Joseph I's rule. You know, before, Joseph I was unhappy because of the power struggle between the Austrian and Hungarian peoples. Now that the Saxon people have been added, many people wonder if Joseph I is a broken pot, a desperate struggle. Or does he want to use Saxony to balance Hungary? But what His Majesty Joseph I didn't know was that he had fallen into some traps that had been designed for him. Austria was originally the most popular power in the German Confederation, which was not something that Prussia could match for a while, but with a stance with Prussia, the cohesion has dissipated. This makes Austria almost a lonely man except for the special country of Silesia. However, the war launched by Austria and Prussia this time caused Prussia to lose more than 8,000 people, Hanoverian soldiers and civilians to be killed and wounded more than 50,000, and Austria also paid a price of 26,000 in Saxony, and defeated Saxony. The latter's casualties also exceeded 100,000 due to the continued brutality of the war. This caused the Austrian Empire to lose 150,000 troops in more than a year since the Schleswig War in Denmark, which can be said to have significantly weakened Austria's national defense. Many people even predicted that Austria had already been the last one among the six major powers, even worse than the Ottoman Empire. This means that Austria's own military and diplomacy have weakened the external environment due to the invasion of Saxony, which has made Austria's overall strength even worse. In the latest Austria-Prussian power struggle within the German Confederation, many people are not optimistic about Austria. On July 5, 1865, when the German Confederation seemed to have returned to peace due to the intervention of Britain and France, a small incident occurred in the Bessarabia region in eastern Austria, which attracted the attention of countries around the world. It turned out that the Russian Empire was dissatisfied with the Ottoman Empire's discriminatory policy against the ethnic groups of the Russian Empire there. After many failed communications, Tsar Alexander I of Russia had already sent troops to northern Bessarabia. However, due to pressure from Britain and other countries, the Russian army only stayed at the border and did not cross the border. However, on July 4, 1865, a joint letter signed by more than 100,000 Russians was made public in the medical Russian parliament in St. Petersburg. The letter detailed how the Ottoman Empire, After seizing the ruling power of Bessarabia from the Russian Empire in 1856, immigrated Ottomans to Bessarabia, squeezed the living space of Russians, brainwashed the Russians, and asked Russians to oppose the yearning of Russia. This is too much? All members of the Russian parliament in St. Petersburg shouted in anger. So the parliament passed the call in the joint letter that the Russian Empire must take back the ruling power of Bessarabia to continue to provide these Russian compatriots with a peaceful environment. So after the parliamentary proposal was passed and signed and confirmed by Alexander II, the Russian Empire army in the north of Bessarabia set out. In just one day, the northern part of Bessarabia was taken. Before other countries could react, on the third day, the 30,000 Russian troops had taken nearly half of the territory of Bessarabia. The Ottoman Empire was angry that its territory was occupied. The Austrian Empire was shocked because the western part of Bessarabia was in the east, and Britain condemned it. France seemed to have confirmed its identity as a mediator, and Napoleon III was addicted to it, so it once again called for reconciliation. Prussia and the Netherlands were silent. Even Italy was eager to try, and no one knew what Emmanuel II was thinking while mobilizing troops at home. For a time, the internal struggle of the German Confederation, which had just ended, had not yet allowed the countries to catch their breath, and the Russian Empire staged the beginning of the war in Bessarabia, which was dazzling. Many people in various countries had to sigh, Europe has really not been peaceful in recent years. Chapter 208, Peace between Britain and Austria. We don't want to fight, but God knows, if we go to war, we have plenty of warships, we have plenty of men, we have plenty of money. We have fought this bear before, and as long as Britain is still alive, the Russians will not have Constantinople. This was the song that could be heard in the street music halls in London in 1865. 10 years later, the Russian Empire once again filled the Balkan Peninsula. This time, Alexander II was much smarter and no longer worked alone. In addition to just taking over the Bessarabia region in early July, Alexander II secretly prepared to support local opposition figures and teams who were dissatisfied with the rule of the Ottoman Empire. So before July 15, 1865, 3 Ottoman provinces, including Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Bulgaria, simultaneously revolted. The Ottoman Empire was caught off guard, so it did not care about the invasion of the Russian Empire in the north, and could only send large armies to suppress the 3 places near the Mediterranean. This provided an opportunity for the Russian Empire to intervene. So after completely occupying Bessarabia on July 20, the Russian Empire officially announced that it would send troops to Moldavia, saying that it was dissatisfied with the Ottoman Empire's suppression of the 3 places, and there were also letters of help from the newly revolted Moldavia opposition figures. To prevent the Ottoman Empire from violently suppressing the Moldavia people. When the Ottoman Empire had just suppressed Bosnia and Herzegovina and was about to advance to Bulgaria in the north, the Bulgarian region mutinied under the armed forces of the Russian Empire. The Ottoman Empire could only fight the Bulgarian armed forces again, and just like watching its enemies cutting flesh on itself, the Ottoman Empire's army was stopped in the south of Bulgaria, while the Russian Empire's army in the north was advancing in Romania. That felt too painful. And the Ottoman army in western Bosnia was separated by Hungary and could not provide effective support to Romania in the north. So when the last day of July came, the Russian Empire almost occupied nearly half of Romania's territory. At this time, European countries began to change their faces, especially Britain and the Austrian Empire. The daily progress of the Russian army was a needle prick in the heart of the 2 countries. Both countries were afraid of the Russian Empire's expansion in the Balkan Peninsula. So when the Russian Empire began to arm Serbia and Montenegro, preparing to stage what Bulgaria did in these 2 principalities, the Austrian Empire hurried to mediate. Britain also sent its fleet in the Middle East to the Black Sea for patrol. Trying to create a tense atmosphere for Austria's mediation, let the Russian Empire know that it was enough, and the patience of Britain and Austria had reached its limit. Be ready for a war to break out at any time. But Alexander II was not a person who gave up easily. On August 3, 1865, the Russian Empire stated that it would not repeat the mistakes of the Russian Empire's disastrous defeat in 1856, and hoped that the people would support the Russian Empire's current policy of resource arming in the Balkan Peninsula. At the same time, they also called on European countries to change their practice of supporting the Ottoman Empire to suppress the Balkan Peninsula and support the war actions launched by the Russian Empire for justice. However, Britain refuted this statement, saying that this was just a ridiculous excuse for the Russian invasion. A robber who stole someone else's food said that he was just trying to prevent the original owner from eating too much food and dying. This reason is very ridiculous. I call on the rulers of St. Petersburg and London to immediately stop invading the Ottoman Empire and negotiate peacefully to resolve the dispute between the two countries. This is the current attitude of the British Empire. Our Mediterranean fleet has already been patrolling the Black Sea. As long as London gives an order, it can immediately join any challenging battle mode. I hope that all countries will respect the British Empire and not ignore our ideas. However, when the British Foreign Office spokesman just finished speaking, Europe was looking at his metaphor and finding it interesting, but the situation in the Balkans did not move in their direction. On August 10, 1865, the Russian Empire completely occupied Romania, and with the support of local opposition, announced that it would be annexed to the Russian Empire, and Moldavia and Bessarabia became the three major principalities under the Russian Empire. The opposition who had previously opposed the Ottoman Empire established a provisional government. At the same time, 136 Turkish officers stationed in Bulgaria were brutally killed on August 11, which aroused the brutal revenge of the Ottoman Empire. The situation took a sharp turn, so in front of the stunned eyes of European countries, on August 15, 1865, more than 20,000 Bulgarians were massacred in the revenge of the Ottoman Empire in the infamous Great Terror of Bulgaria. This incident was widely reported in European newspapers, and European countries were dumbfounded. In St. Petersburg, Alexander I took the opportunity to condemn the Ottoman Empire and appealed to major powers such as Britain and Austria, asking these countries not to support the tyrannical Ottoman Empire, but to stand on the side of the just Tsarist Russian Empire. The Prussian Empire also stood up at the right time, saying that it could not believe this was true, and stated that it would impose sanctions on the Ottoman Empire. Berlin did not make it clear what sanctions and how to carry them out. However, Berlin's attitude played a follow-up role. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Sweden, the Kingdom of Denmark and others announced sanctions against the Ottoman Empire. Later, Spain, Italy and Portugal also joined the team. Seeing so many countries forming a condemnation team, London finally changed its attitude and joined reluctantly. In London, Foreign Secretary Russell angrily said, "The Ottomans can only wash away the insults against them in one way, that is, wash away themselves and call on Constantinople not to harm civilians again. Raise it high and put it down gently." This is Britain's attitude. Many countries understand Britain's intentions, and this is why the Ottoman Empire is fearless, because Britain needs the Ottoman Empire to help Britain guard the Black Sea and the Mediterranean channels, as well as the south of the Balkan Peninsula, to prevent the Russian Empire from breaking through here. And the Suez Canal was maintained by Britain only because the Ottoman Empire did not oppose and supported Britain's rule. Therefore, seriously speaking, Britain's relationship with the Ottoman Empire needs the Ottoman Empire more than European countries. The Ottoman Empire is more important in Britain's strategy than many countries. Therefore, although Britain condemns it on the surface, they may be doing the opposite, and weapons are continuously supporting the Ottoman Empire to prevent further southward invasion of the Russian Empire. William IV expressed his views at the January lecture for all teachers and students at the latest diplomatic academy. He continued, "Britain needs the Ottoman Empire, and it is more assured to use it, because compared with European countries, the Ottoman Empire is a country of different nationalities and beliefs. For Britain, there is no moral constraint, and it is all expedient cooperation. And even if the Ottoman Empire is supported and strengthened, as long as Britain's foreign policy changes, it can unite European countries to declare war on the Ottoman Empire based on differences in race and belief. This is Britain's balanced policy." In fact, it is true that William IV said that the Ottoman Empire is a country that Britain has kept in Southeast Europe. The gradual weakening of the Ottoman Empire is in line with Britain's original intention to control a big country, which is difficult to do on the European continent. By controlling the Ottoman Empire, Britain can use the transit goods in the Middle East to continuously transport raw materials from the Indian Ocean back to the British Isles through the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean. Therefore, once the Russian Empire seized a large area of the Ottoman Empire, according to the imperialist temperament of the Russian Empire, it would certainly not allow Britain to get involved in the Middle East and the Mediterranean. Then Britain would lose control of Far East India, and there would be an opportunity to further use naval force to oppress the famous Far East country, the Qing dynasty, to further open up the country's market. This would undoubtedly be a heavy blow to Britain, which was composed of capital. Therefore, While condemning the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire also repeatedly warned the Russian Empire, either explicitly or implicitly, asking the country to stop its southern invasion, but the Russian Empire not only ignored it, but even attacked Varna in eastern Bulgaria. The Russian Empire's lack of face completely angered the British Empire. At this time, Austrian Emperor Joseph I was worried about his own situation because of the hatred of the Austrian Empire within the German Confederation, so he chose to show goodwill to Britain at this time. The performance of the Austrian Empire on the Balkan Peninsula issue satisfied Britain, and Britain believed that Austrian military power, especially the army, could be used. Prussia, which was originally supported by Britain, has been out of control like a wild horse in recent years. In many cases, the policies it has made are not in line with the interests of Britain. Therefore, the olive branch extended by Austria is a pleasant surprise to Britain. Moreover, Austria's weakness makes it easier for Britain to control it. Its four warring areas, surrounded by the Russian Empire, the Prussian Empire, the French Empire and the Ottoman Empire, meet the best model of balanced diplomacy that Britain needs. In particular, Britain is very dissatisfied with the expansion of the Russian Empire in the Near East. If the Russian Empire occupies the two straits of Ottoman Turkey, Britain's influence in the Mediterranean will inevitably be seriously damaged, so Britain cannot give up the two straits. Supporting the Austrian Empire and the Ottoman Empire will help stop the Russian Empire. Therefore, Britain is determined to support the Ottoman Empire while also beginning to tilt diplomatic support and military resources towards Austria. On August 20, 1865, Austria and Britain, dissatisfied with the Russian Empire's invasion of the Ottoman Empire, made peace and reached a decision in Vienna to aid the Ottoman Empire. At the same time, the relationship between the Austrian Empire and the Russian Empire will become more tense. For this reason, under the threat of the Austrian Empire, the Tsarist Russian government had no choice but to announce that it would list the Austrian Empire on the country's list of hostile countries. Another country on the list was the Ottoman Empire. Chapter 209, North American Defeat. What the Russian Empire did in the Balkans has made our Austrian Empire feel threatened. Therefore, the only temporary goodwill that Austria had for the Russian Empire after the Crimean War disappeared because the Russian Empire once again pushed the wheel of history to the south of the Black Sea. Now, the Austrian government has chosen to stand on the right side of Britain and has taken a defensive posture against the Russian Empire. This is what Emperor Franz Joseph I of the Austrian Empire explained in Parliament about the alliance with Britain. Austria has a vast territory, is a member of the Holy Alliance, and has been one of the most powerful countries in Europe for many years. Britain is now the most powerful country in Europe. Such a combination is a huge threat to any European country. When the Russian Empire was surprised by Austria's clear unified policy with Britain toward Russia, the Russian Empire began to increase its troops and move south. After occupying Varna, the front-line troops in front also chose not to move forward. On August 25, 1865, more than 100,000 Russian troops arrived in Romania, of which 50,000 were deployed near the border between Romania and Bessarabia near Austria, and another 50,000 were deployed near the Bulgarian border. At the same time, in the Caucasus, the Russian Empire also added more than 50,000 troops to prevent the Ottoman Empire from counterattacking in the east of the Black Sea. Especially in Georgia, which is a buffer zone between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire. Austria was naturally not to be outdone, and they also deployed more than 100,000 people in Transylvania on the Eastern Front. In the north, they exchanged with the Schleswig Army, and transferred 50,000 experienced veterans who had just experienced the Schleswig War back to Austria. Austria deployed them to the Carpathian Mountains on the border with the Russian Empire in the north, which is close to Ukraine, so that they can echo each other and threaten Romania in the east and the Ukrainian Principality of the Russian Empire in the north. When the Russian Empire saw the posture of Austria, it didn't understand that the Austrian Empire and Britain were determined to fight against the Russian Empire. This made Alexander II hesitate. Because after 10 years of development, the Russian Empire has recovered its vitality, and its national strength has even greatly improved, which is very different from 10 years ago. Therefore, the Russian Empire is very confident in dealing with the gradually declining Ottoman Empire. But if Austria joins, it will be a bit difficult for the Russian Empire. Although Austria's population of 30 to 40 million is nearly times that of the Russian Empire, don't forget that there is also the Ottoman Empire. The population of the two countries combined is actually not much less than that of the Russian Empire. Moreover, The armies of the two countries are almost the same in quality, so it takes a comparison to know whether it is real gold and silver. What worries the Russian Empire most is the threat of Britain next to it. This is a big threat that will not be released without seeing the rabbit. This is a country that will kill the enemy with blood. The Russian Empire did not mention the promotion to guard against the other side. However, after a team of the federal government of the United States suddenly appeared on August 27, 1865, the Prussian diplomatic team followed to visit St. Petersburg, and then Alexander II dispelled his concerns. On September 5, 1865, the United States and North America launched an attack on the Confederate States of the South and the British Landing Army. Grant took advantage of the fact that the Confederate States of the South and the British thought that the North did not dare to face them, and used the strategy of sneak attack first and the long-deployed army to follow up. A fierce attack was launched. This time the North seemed to be assisted by God. The Confederate States of the South suddenly felt unfamiliar with the Northern Army's method of deploying troops and arranging battle arrays. Caught off guard, they were beaten into messy formation and retreated under the impact. The British originally wanted to preserve their strength and watch the battle, but the North would not give them a chance. In the east of Richmond, the British Army also faced the same attack. However, unlike the previous times, this time the old-fashioned American attack in their eyes became more like a European method of warfare, which confused the 30,000 British troops and was beaten to pieces. In the end, the South occupied Richmond from the North. In this Battle of Richmond, the North dispatched more than 150,000 people. More than 50,000 casualties, 3,000 people were captured and killed. The Confederate States of the South participated in the war with 80,000 people, more than 50,000 dead and wounded, and 7,000 people were captured. The British Army of 30,000 people lost more than 16,000 people, and more than 2,000 people were missing and captured. As soon as this result appeared, the North was excited and the South was in mourning. In particular, the idea that the British Army had originally placed high hopes on the strike against the North was now extremely disappointed. Britain was also defeated, and it was a very miserable kind. When this news crossed the Atlantic and reached Europe on September 6, all countries simultaneously cast surprised eyes on Britain west of the English Channel. When the British in Europe faced the eyes of their partners, they felt very dazzling. Although gossip was not popular in newspapers of this era, it depended on who they were targeting. Now facing Britain, which was hostile to the Tsarist Russian Empire, their country's newspapers would naturally not show mercy, and the Tsarist Russian government was also turning a blind eye to this and acquiescing to the reports of the country's newspapers. What happened to Britain recently? This is the title of Voice of Tsarist Russia. In recent years, Britain's national strength has been declining, but the country has been boasting about its improved international status. Although our countries have expressed doubts about this, they have allowed them to brag. However, with the situation in the United States this time, Britain's participation in the war is fine. Many British people even think that the British Army will be successful as soon as it arrives, and the Northern Federation will bow down to the British Army. But they are wrong, and we are also surprised. The Northern Federation actually resisted the pressure from Britain. Instead, it was just a war that caused the British Army's 30,000 troops to lose 60% of their combat power. What makes the South dissatisfied is that this is the biggest loss since the South and the North went to war. The Southerners joke that the British death rate increased the death and injury rate of the South in this battle, dragging down the degree of personnel losses in the South. Although there is dissatisfaction, it does show that the participation of the British Army not only did not help, but the previous record of fewer deaths in the South than in the North has now been broken. Britain should be ashamed and apologize to the Southern military. This reminds us of the situation in South Africa, when Britain also faced the indigenous Zulu kingdom in the Transvaal Republic, and lost more than 100,000 troops, shocking Europe. Could it be that Britain, which lost 18,000 troops this time, is going to repeat the South African story in North America again? Quotation mark. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210, The Enlightenment of Austrian Empire Josephi. The war between the two sides in the southern part of North America has intensified recently, attracting the attention of the world. The Northern Federation's anti-import of British goods and the British blockade of the east coast of the United States in anger have led to a confrontation between the two countries' warships at sea. On September 10, 1865, Britain was angry about the huge losses in the Battle of Richmond, so it sent a large number of warships from the Atlantic Fleet to carry out the blockade of the east coast ports of the Northern Federation of the United States from London, curbing the industrial exports of the Northern Federation of the United States, intending to retaliate against the huge damage caused to Britain. On this day, as usual, the British first-class sailing battleship London, under the protection of other battleships, continued to patrol like a blockade outside the San Francisco port of the Northern Federation of the United States. The person leading the team this time was Major General George. He was looking at New York City on the shore in the distance and felt regretful. "Major General George, is our mission this time just to take a look?" A colonel was also on the deck and said to George dissatisfiedly, "Instead of this, we might as well go directly to the Mediterranean and participate in the war against Tsarist Russia in the Near East." George was also helpless when he heard this. In fact, he was reluctant to accept this mission. Although the navy of the Northern Federation was not weak, with a tonnage of almost half that of the United Kingdom, it was still not enough in front of the United Kingdom. And now because of the British blockade, they all ran to the port. Originally, George did not need to come to the west coast of North America. The fleet he led, consisting of one first-class sailing battleship, 3 second-class sailing battleships and 7 sixth and 7th-class sailing battleships, was originally tasked to support the Ottoman Navy in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, which was in trouble, and suppress the naval power of Tsarist Russia in the Mediterranean. However, after the British blockade of the east coast of North America, the British intelligence ship discovered that they were actually conducting maritime trade in industrial products on the west coast of the eastern Pacific. This is too much? What Britain wants is to completely blockade the United States of America at sea. How could they let them play the game of the East is not bright and the West is bright? So they used the principle of proximity and transferred them, who were just about to be allocated from the Indian Ocean Fleet to support the Mediterranean Fleet, to the east coast of the Pacific. So there is this mission now. The helplessness of the two represents the rebirth of everyone in the entire squadron. "Major General, I understand why the London government did not ask us to invade the Dutch Far East with such a large fleet. I heard that the size of their fleet is not much larger than ours. If we can bring a few ships from the Indian Ocean Fleet, I believe it will be easy to take over there. I really don't understand what London is thinking. Now, they are fighting for the Southern Confederacy and suffering heavy losses. I think Viscount Palmerston is not feeling well now." Major General George glared at his direct subordinates and felt a little dissatisfied. It is really unpleasant to watch others make achievements while he is sent to this place where no one lives. His subordinate said, "I heard that the Alexander Islands in the north of our Canada now belong to the Netherlands. Do you want it?" George said unhappily, "What do you want?" "Major General, do you want us to take it down, and even take over the whole Alaska? The Dutch should not dare to resist. You must know that they know that resistance is actually useless." "Is it really useless?" Major General George was moved. However, he did not listen to his subordinate's advice, because he understood that as a soldier, it was his job to execute military orders and complete the mission. However, after completing this mission, if he went north or south to the Hawaiian Islands, that would be another matter. Thinking of the geographical location of the Hawaiian Islands and the scene of the Dutch fleet that had lost to him and had to give way to his own fleet, George was filled with pride. "Tell everyone to continue the boring blockade, and we'll talk about other things later." His subordinate nodded helplessly. However, he did think about fighting with them on other warships next to him, because it was too boring every day. The conversation between the two on the deck ended here. However, they did not see that the sea in their area had become much darker, and if they looked more carefully, they could see whale-sized cigars swimming in the sea. In fact, even if they saw it, they would only think it was a group of whales in the sea where whales often appeared, and they didn't care. But this indifference brought them a catastrophe. On September 10, 1865, William Sherman, Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Northern Confederate States of the United States, led an army of 80,000. After the victory of the Battle of Richmond in the east, he led this army south along the Mississippi River. When the southern garrison was caught off guard, he quickly took action and captured Memphis on the east bank of the Mississippi River in Tennessee, which had a garrison of 30,000 people, at the cost of less than 3,000 people. After the South lost more than 10,000 people, Part of it evacuated eastward to Shiloh. Another part evacuated south along the Mississippi River to Vicksburg, Mississippi. Just as General Sherman was rhythmically conquering the South's territory and the Midwest in the West, Britain did not dare to be laughed at, so on the second day after the news came out, it sent 50,000 troops from the mainland to support here, and the landing place was Louisiana. The Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire were constantly at war in Bulgaria. Although Austria and Britain supported the Ottoman Empire, Joseph I was very cautious in his actions and did not want to fire the first shot at will, because he was afraid that Alexander II's anger would suddenly shift from the Ottoman Empire to their Austria. So this support, whether it is said or done, needs to be considered how to start, in order to maximize Austria's interests. Your Majesty, I think we can support the Ottoman Empire in terms of weapons. It should be about the same. Foreign Minister Reisberg suggested, if we send troops, the Russian Empire may set its sights on us. Sultan Abdulaziz I of the Ottoman Empire may really be relieved and thank us for taking the war ourselves. After hearing this, Prime Minister Archduke Rainer Ferdinand frowned and retorted, this is definitely not feasible, because the Ottoman Empire is not short of weapons. Everyone knows that Britain's productivity is the best in the world. What they want most is to sell weapons to Britain. If we just give weapons to the Ottoman Empire, not only will we not get the gratitude of the Ottoman Empire, but we will offend the British, because this will destroy their opportunity to make money. Moreover, providing weapons will not have much impact on the Russian Empire's invasion of the Balkans. Then tell me, what should we do? Joseph I was very upset. Suddenly, he was absolutely sure that the situation in the previous few years was better. At that time, Austria could bring a number of small and medium-sized German countries to the German Confederation Parliament, and with a minority statement, coerce Prussia to make an attitude towards other European powers, so that countries dared not to arbitrarily point fingers at Austria. Now Austria's followers are almost gone, and these things happened in the past year. Joseph I was naturally not stupid. Now he recalled that the Bismarck government used the territory of Schleswig as bait to guide the Austrian Empire step by step to get rid of its small country allies on land, all the way to the dark. Especially when invading Saxony, an ally that often cooperated with Austria in Parliament, and Hanover, an Austrian pseudo-ally that Prussia regarded as a thorn in the eye, attacked Prussia. Austria sat on the wall and did not support it, which made more countries feel chilled. It's all my own fault after all. He secretly sighed that his greed had led to the current consequences. At the same time, he secretly hated Bismarck's meanness. Therefore, this time Austria must rely on the Balkan Peninsula crisis to improve its relations with Britain in order to effectively check and balance the already powerful kingdom of Prussia. Only in this way can Austria continue to maintain its balance and maintain its balance of power with Prussia. This is also the psychology that he grasped the British's most desired point. So, he said fiercely, order the Southeastern Army to communicate with the Ottoman Empire, and we will support the Ottoman Empire's 30,000 troops from Belgrade, the capital of the Serbian Principality of the Ottoman Empire. We will help them defend Serbia. Reina and the others agreed after hearing this. Serbia is in the south of Hungary. If it is occupied by the Russian Empire, it will be a threatening problem for Hungary, because this will cause Hungary to face the threat of the Russian Empire in the east and south in addition to the west and north. Instead of doing this, instead of being passive, it is better to take the initiative to ask for assistance in defending Serbia and test whether the Russian Empire will take the Austrian Empire into consideration. It can be said to kill two birds with one stone. If the Russian Empire attacks, then for Austria, Hungary and Austria in the east will need to strengthen their defenses, and a full-scale war may have to start. So, the three rulers in Vienna made this decision. Amsterdam, in the royal palace. William IV looked at the map spread on the table, but the pen in his hand was quickly making circles and markings. Even Queen Alexandra, who was pregnant, approached without noticing. Alexandra walked behind him and gently rubbed his shoulders. When this technique appeared, William IV, who was stunned at first, was startled and tensed, but smiled. Why don't you take a rest and run here? Although dissatisfied, there was a doting look in his words. Pull her over and put her in his arms. William IV is over 1.85 meters tall, but the height of the Dutch is very good. And the blood of the tall Danes also makes Alexandra over 1.7 meters tall. Therefore, the combination of these two tall ethnic groups, but no one would think that their offspring would become shorter. If you lie down for too long, your body will collapse. The doctor recommends walking more. Alexandra saw that William Ivy's frown had not yet dissipated. So she smoothed his frown and asked, "What's wrong?" William Ivy pointed to the map and said, "The world is in chaos now. Am I not looking for a location for the Netherlands?" Location? Chapter 211, The European Shield We Don't Want to Be? Alexandra was stunned at first. The two had known each other since childhood, and now they have been husband and wife for almost 2 years. They are also in tune with each other. And William Ivy did not even shy away from Alexandra in many national affairs, and sometimes taught her how to deal with them. Alexandra's political talent was also very good. She could often bring some unexpected new ideas to William Ivy and give him unexpected gains. This made William Ivy want to put pressure on Queen Alexandra to cultivate ideas. However, how to cultivate? So he threw this question to Queen Alexandra? The latter was stunned. Obviously, she did not expect William Ivy to be a bachelor and would throw such a question directly to her. How should she answer it? Prime Minister of the Netherlands? You must be kidding. There is no such thing as a female prime minister in the world now, and even female cabinet members have not happened in various countries. Thinking of this, Queen Alexandra shook her head with a wry smile and said unhappily, "Aren't you embarrassing me?" Seeing this, William Ivy helped her put her messy bangs behind her ears. A lot of positions for women to participate in politics have recently appeared in his mind. Many of the limiting factors in this era have been eliminated by him, but some positions can be carried out. For example, the recent frequent wars. If Alexandra works well, then the benefits to Alexandra and the position of Queen Alexandra to the Netherlands are immeasurable. The intensity of Bulgaria's entry into the war began to slowly ignite. According to the latest report from the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute, in the past month alone, there have been 150 incidents of multiple conflicts between the two sides causing shooting and shelling. This is the highest single-day data in the absence of regular battles since 1865. Now, with the increasing number of troops stationed in Bulgaria by the Tsarist Empire, a large number of people here have retreated to the south. Although most people retreated to the direction of Constantinople, a large number of people also retreated to the direction of the Kingdom of Greece. This has increased William II's ruling difficulties, but William II was well prepared and did not form a situation of panic. It was under this escalation of the geopolitical conflict between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire that the relevant parties such as Britain, Austria, and even France and Prussia were using the previous bilateral mechanisms to play games. Even like Britain's alliance, the Russian Empire began to seek its own allies and partners to try to maximize its interests. On September 25, 1865, President Lincoln of the United States met with Crown Prince Nicholas of the Russian Empire in the capital Washington, D.C. After a secret meeting, the two countries announced a strategic alliance to support each other and jointly fight against possible national invasions. After the news came out, an emergency meeting was held in London. After that, Foreign Secretary Russell announced his dissatisfaction with the signing of an alliance between the two countries, saying that the Russian Empire's intervention in North American affairs was contrary to the original practice of Britain and the Russian Empire not to compete in North America, and violated the mutual trust between the two countries. Britain expressed regret for this. At the same time, he said that Britain would not give up its strategic decision in North America because of this, and called on the Russian Empire not to disappoint the British people, etc. Austria was also dissatisfied with the decision of the Lincoln government and asked the Lincoln government to withdraw from the agreement. The Ottoman Empire even condemned the Lincoln government's decision to support the Russian Empire and said it would make relevant counterattacks. Afterwards, the Ottoman Empire stated that it would provide 3,000 Ottoman soldiers to the Confederate States of the United States, an ally of Britain, to fight against the United States. The Ottoman Empire did what it said, and directly ignored the Russian Empire and the Lincoln government. This surprised both countries. Both countries, especially the United States of America where the Lincoln government was located, secretly remembered this move of the Ottoman Empire. Because of this seemingly indifferent move of Abdullah Aziz I, the Ottoman Empire where he was later was not satisfied after being disintegrated by the United States, and ravaged it one by one, causing great suffering to the people of the country's later generations. This is a later story. Abdullah Aziz I said at a press conference on October 1, 1865, "We do not want to see Britain and Austria adopt a policy of appeasement towards the Russian Empire, which makes the Ottoman Empire a victim of the Russian Empire's ambitions." If the Ottoman Empire does not get military support from Britain and other countries, then the Ottoman Empire may be ready to negotiate with the Russian Empire. Because we do not want to be the European shield of European countries sitting on the wall and watching the confrontation with the Russian Empire. In view of the different interests of European countries, the Ottoman Empire hopes to see the backs of soldiers from various countries in the confrontation front, rather than the backs of our Ottoman soldiers standing alone in front to meet the artillery fire of the Russian Empire. To this end, the Ottoman Empire summoned the ambassadors of all European countries in Constantinople except the Russian Empire. They were asked to feed back the opinions of the Ottoman Empire to the countries. They asked the countries to make clear whether they wanted the Ottoman Empire to negotiate concessions with the Russian Empire. If not, they should respond to the Ottoman Empire's request for countries to send troops to support the Ottoman Empire. The actions of the Ottoman Empire put the major European countries in a dilemma. European countries formed a disagreement on which side to take. Britain and Austria decisively supported the Ottoman Empire. Britain said it would support them and send half of the Mediterranean fleet to the middle reaches of the Black Sea, intending to control the actions of the Tsarist Russia at sea and reduce the space for Tsarist Russia's activities on the Black Sea. At the same time, London would send 20,000 troops to land on the Bulgarian front. Austria also said that it would send another 30,000 troops to Bulgaria on the basis of assisting the Ottoman Empire in protecting Serbia, and form a coalition with Britain to fight against the invasion of the Tsarist Russia to the south. Compared with the innocent statement and reasonable demands of the Ottoman Empire, the Tsarist Russia was portrayed as a warmonger and invader by Britain and Austria. But none of this mattered. The Tsarist Russia did what it had to do, and Alexander II would not care how it acted. However, after Austria increased its troops in Serbia, the Tsarist Russia sent a large army to press on the border between Austria and Hungary, causing constant complaints from the people in both places. Hungary, in particular, was originally dissatisfied with Austrian rule, but was relatively calm. But this time, Joseph I provoked the Russian Empire without convening the entire imperial parliament to express his position, which intensified the dissatisfaction of the Hungarians, who had always been on good terms with the Russian Empire. There was more opposition to the rule of Joseph I of Austria. For this reason, Vienna could only delegate many of the powers that Hungary requested again, so that the anger led by Hungarian politicians could be calmed down. However, this also laid more seeds for the subsequent division of the two places. Chapter 212, British Pacific Fleet attacked. 1865, when the war between the North and the South was going on in North America, the Northern Confederacy took over Tennessee and the northern part of the Mississippi and was beginning to move in a favorable direction towards the north. At this time, the Southern Confederate States of America suddenly announced that they recognized the Mexican Emperor in the South, Archduke Maximilian, the brother of Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph I, who was supported by Napoleon III of the French Empire. The Northern Confederate States of America expressed dissatisfaction with this, but there was indeed no follow-up this time. Obviously, with the instability of the situation in North America, the Northern Confederate States of America, as the heir of the United States of America, began to downplay the Monroe Policy, which was extremely important in the original U.S. foreign policy. The Lincoln government, which was obviously unable to take care of itself, had realized that it could no longer maintain the U.S. ambitions in Latin America. This long-term plan set up to rule Latin America, at present, will instead offend countries such as the French Empire, the Kingdom of Spain, and Portugal, which are not hostile to the North. Even the Netherlands, a country that the Confederacy of America is fighting for, is disgusted with this Monroe Policy. Therefore, the actions of the Confederation of the United States were naturally recognized by European countries. The French Empire responded by expressing neutrality and not sending troops to North America to support either side. This made the South helpless, while the North was quiet. However, this silence was broken with the emergence of a piece of news. On October 1, 1865, one side of the news was reported all over the world. At 6 a.m. on the east coast of the Pacific Ocean on September 29, the Pacific Squadron sent by the British Empire to blockade the west coast of the Confederation of the United States off the coast of San Francisco was unexpectedly attacked by an inexplicable attack. The other side was a torpedo from the sea. A total of 11 warships, including one first-class sailing battleship, 3 second-class sailing battleships, and 7 fifth and sixth-class sailing battleships, were sunk by this wave of attacks. The first-class battleship King, as well as the other 2 second-class battleships, 3 fifth-class battleships, and 1 sixth-class battleship. The rest all fled to the British naval base on Malay Island in the Western Pacific with injuries, and halfway through, one search sank because it was too seriously injured. In other words, such an attack from the sea caused the loss of 7 of Britain's 11 sailing warships. Among them, the first and second level battleships with the strongest firepower were almost all destroyed. This was a heavy pain for the British Navy, which was a powerful maritime force. Not only was it uncomfortable, but the ranking of its own naval tonnage was also closer to that of the second-ranked French Empire. This posed a huge hidden danger to Britain's maritime security. Since the location was outside the United States, and the mission was to control the United States maritime import and export trade. Therefore, Britain's anger was naturally directed to the Lincoln government in the north. The streets of various cities in Britain were full of people. They held up demonstration plaques and banners, demanding that the British government punish the Lincoln government in North America and seek justice for the lost naval soldiers. At the same time, they fought to maintain Britain's honor. At the same time, the exclusive news that Rear Admiral George of the attacked fleet was visited by the Financial Times was reprinted by various countries. We were carrying out a military mission arranged by the British cabinet government off the coast of San Francisco, but we did not harm a single sea trader or crew member. We simply asked them to return to their West Coast mainland. If they refused to listen, we would simply board their ships and confiscate them. Then we sent warships to take them to the new small port of Vancouver in Western Canada. However, we never thought that the fleet of the United States of America would attack the navy of the British Empire. Really, I never thought about it. But I was wrong. We were all wrong. They took advantage of our kindness to them to attack us. The attack came from the bottom of the sea, and most members of the British Navy had never seen such an attack. Therefore, we were caught off guard and suffered a great loss. This was a completely new way of naval attack, and we became the sacrifice of this new type of soldiers. Many of our colleagues stayed in that sea forever. As for the source of the attack, I thought about it afterwards. It might be from the submarine force of the United States of America. Because in 1863, the South attacked and sank the North's warships on the East Coast with the Hunley submarine. And it is said that the North already had the same submarine. Obviously, Britain's participation in the war has made the North use the same tactics against Britain. Here, I call on the British government and the top naval officials to follow up on submarine research and policies so that we can fight back and pose a threat to the enemy in the water. Viscount Palmerston, we are shocked by this, and then we are extremely shocked. The British Empire has not had such a maritime attack for decades. We will not give up any right to retaliate against the perpetrators. Although it is loud, Britain is currently facing the threat of war from the Russian Empire in the Mediterranean. Therefore, it can only rotate and transfer the Atlantic Fleet to the Pacific. It will take at least a month for them to arrive at the east coast of the Pacific. We did not deploy any submarines to the west coast, so we will not admit that we were the ones who attacked the British Navy this time. We express our condolences and regrets for the silent casualties of the British Navy. However, no matter how hard the Lincoln government tried to explain, they could not convince the outside world that it was not them. Even in their country, many citizens do not think that the Lincoln government is innocent. On the contrary, the reason for the great killer move hidden by the Lincoln government in various places continues to rise. This makes the Lincoln cabinet government miserable. William, this is obviously making the United States dumb. Whether the British Navy was really attacked, we have endless research, and the United States has no way to verify it. Will Britain deliberately release a smoke bomb? Alexandra analyzed. Nearly 8 months pregnant, she followed in alone like a big watermelon, round and bulging, which made William IV feel that his integration with this world has reached the extreme. Especially seeing this pressure Alexandra, who was originally the Queen of Edward VI of the United Kingdom. Now she is helping him rack his brains to analyze the pros and cons of various British policies on the Kingdom of the Netherlands. William IV feels that he has really changed the world. At the same time, he also has a sense of pride. What big situation can be changed, small situation can be changed at will. I want to mess up this world. Only then can the Netherlands profit from it and become more and more powerful. Taking his hand off the pregnant Queen's belly, William IV asked, "Why do you think so?" The benefit of Britain doing this is that it can use it to increase domestic military spending. Recently, the British Navy is said to be very dissatisfied with the practice of various countries increasing the size of the Navy last year. At the same time, they also feel a lot of pressure and are afraid of provocations from various countries. Therefore, I suspect that the British military giants and their domestic arms manufacturing companies jointly directed this incident. They are trying to create momentum, make the people feel a sense of crisis, and let the British Parliament pass an increase in military spending, especially the submarine plan and the new warship replenishment policy. This is a huge military expenditure, which can satisfy many people's desire to fill their pockets. Seeing that William IV did not object, she followed up with, the arms companies of various countries have always been lobbying giants in the parliaments of various countries. Take Denmark as an example. Although Denmark has a small territory, because it has large overseas territories such as Iceland and Greenland, many members of the Danish parliament always use this as an excuse to ask my father to increase military spending. Of course, the threat of the German Confederation is also the main reason. Each country is facing various threats, especially in this era of war. The influence of the arms giants is huge. It is so great that it even affects the operation of governments in various countries. As far as I know, in the UK, naval equipment manufacturers have won over 1/5 of the members of parliament. It can be said that this has become a middle force different from the Tories and Whigs. Even Viscount Palmerston, a veteran in the political arena, has to bow his head in front of them. Okay, William IV praised, what about the Netherlands? Alexandra smiled and said, are you testing me? The Netherlands is different. When the Netherlands established the East India Company, the world's largest capitalists cooperated with a king's state model. But after Britain defeated the Netherlands and took over the foundation of the Netherlands, and then experienced Napoleonized occupation of the Netherlands, everything was broken. After several generations of King William worked hard, the largest capital groups in the Netherlands have been gradually incorporated. Especially after you, William, established a William Group, it is more appropriate to let major Dutch capitalists invest in the name of shares, forming a vortex-like black hole, swallowing up powerful opponents and talent pools inside and outside the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It can be said that it is not an exaggeration to say that it has become the largest company in the world. Every move of the William Group affects the employment form and economic development direction of the Netherlands. Alexandra's eyes showed admiration. If the Dutch cabinet government is to formulate the international policy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, then the William Group, which you established and controlled since 1857, is the civilian executor of the Kingdom of the Netherlands policy. It plays the leading role of the Dutch people following the national policy, and injects the role of stabilizer into the domestic economy and governance of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. William IV, before that, I had some doubts, but at this moment, I am more certain that you can be competent for a position. Queen Alexandra was stunned and asked with interest, what position? William IV, Director General of the International Women's Alliance Organization. Alexandra was shocked and exclaimed, International Women's Alliance? What a high-sounding name. William IV, this is an organization whose main purpose is to promote women's political participation and basic rights and status, such as the right to vote and elect, employment rights and educational rights. Alexandra, is this the same organization as the women's rights movement launched in New York in 1848? Do you know that movement? William IV shook his head and said, that was the one that became extreme in this environment. What I meant was that this organization is gradual and is an official organization recognized by various countries. Alexandra, the current environment in the Netherlands is just right for various countries to make concessions on this insignificant organization, and there is no loss to each country. William, did you seize this point and formally launch this organization? Lee. William IV nodded and said, it may seem that the impact is not significant, but think about the benefits that the initiator of this organization will get. If it is the Queen of the Netherlands and the First Secretary General, then the positive influence of the Netherlands in the world will be huge. In the future, men in various countries may remember which country the Netherlands invaded. But their wives and daughters will remember that it was under the promotion of the Queen of the Netherlands that they gained equal rights. Tell me, is this position important? Upon hearing this, Alexandra nodded quickly like a little girl facing her idol. Chapter 213 International Women's Alliance is established. 1865. On the most desirable Biarritz beach in the Atlantic Ocean of the French Empire, a guest was attracted, Bismarck, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Prussia. The Prime Minister of Prussia, on behalf of William I, held a second meeting with French Emperor Napoleon III there. The last time was in October 1864, and a year later, this time was also in October. During the meeting, the two sides did not sign any agreement, but Bismarck got what he wanted from Napoleon III. However, the outside world did not know that this short meeting, which seemed to have no agreement signed, was the most bizarre. William IV was staring at this scene like the eye of God. He knew that the end of this meeting meant that Austria, which was staring at the Balkan Peninsula, was in trouble. And Joseph I, who blindly believed that he was helping Britain in the Balkan Peninsula, did not know that he had been calculated. Napoleon III would never have thought that his empire would be defeated soon because of this meeting. It was even ridiculed as the Biarritz meeting, a private meeting where the empire secretly handed over the position of the empire. On October 20, 1865, the Ottoman Empire opened fire on the Russian Empire in Bulgaria. Later, the Austrian Empire also got involved, and Britain landed after bombarding the occupied areas of the Russian Empire at sea. The Russian army was suppressed for a while, and even driven out of Varna, the occupied area of Bulgaria. Under the pursuit of the three countries, it retreated to Romania, which was well defended. This battle lasted for 5 days, and each of the three countries suffered losses. The Ottoman Empire dispatched 50,000 people, the Austrian Empire 30,000 people, and the British 20,000 people. The casualties of the Ottoman Empire were 18,000, the Austrian Empire 12,000, and the British 6,000. The Russian Empire's 60,000 troops suffered 41,000 casualties. The Bulgarian campaign of the entire war involved 160,000 people, with more than 77,000 casualties, nearly half of which were killed or wounded. This is the largest casualty in the Balkan Peninsula since this time. Therefore, the military resources of various countries have been continuously gathered there through three routes such as sea, land and inland rivers, preparing for the next war. The Balkan Peninsula was covered with dark clouds for a while. Other small principalities were trembling, afraid of getting into trouble. On October 26, 1865, William II of the Kingdom of Greece announced that the Kingdom of Greece would not favor any party among the countries. He expressed the hope that all countries would put aside their prejudices, restore peace and stability in the Balkan Peninsula, and reduce unnecessary casualties. Following closely was Emmanuel II of Italy, who also announced that Italy would not take a position, but asked the Russian Empire to remain calm, and at the same time stated that Italy would not send a single soldier to participate in the Balkan Peninsula War unless Italy's interests were damaged. With the announcement of these two countries with autonomous rights in the Eastern Mediterranean, other European countries also began to express their positions. The Netherlands also declared neutrality, but would continue to pay attention to the interests of the Netherlands there, calling on all countries to protect the interests of all countries that are not involved in the war, including the Netherlands. However, Prussia's statement is more ambiguous. Because the country said that Prussia is very serious about maintaining national interests and will not miss any opportunity that is beneficial to Prussia. What kind of statement will this be? This made all countries wary, especially many small countries within the German Confederation Empire. They were worried that Prussia would take advantage of the fact that Austria of the German Empire participated in the war in the Balkans and had no counterweights, and chose to directly invade other small countries like the Kingdom of Hanover. In fact, their concerns were right. On November 1, 1865, when the Kingdom of the Netherlands announced the establishment of the International Women's League in The Hague and the first Director General was Queen Alexandra of the Netherlands, all countries were shocked. Especially after seeing the purpose of the organization, more history captured the hearts of a large number of women in various countries, and they all agreed to express their opinions. The northern federal states of the United States even held more than 1 million women's street marches for this purpose, demanding that the federal state join the organization when it was established. The Lincoln government naturally would not object. So on November 1, it was announced that the United States of America became the second member of the organization. After that, the Kingdom of Greece also announced its joining the organization and recognized the status of the International Women's Alliance. Subsequently, the Kingdom of Sweden and the Kingdom of Denmark joined one after another. The major institutions are where small countries speak, so Belgium also chose to join. The Duchy of Württemberg, the Duchy of Luxembourg, the Kingdom of Bavaria, and a series of German Confederation countries of the German Confederation also chose to join. In addition, the French Empire, known as the European Ideological Holy Land, also announced it. However, In order to prevent the Netherlands from using the identity of the founder of this organization to influence women in France, Napoleon III announced the establishment of his own domestic women's branch, which still belongs to the International Women's Alliance in name. Seeing this, other countries also followed suit, obviously reducing the influence of the Netherlands. At this time, the United Kingdom naturally chose to join the organization. Surprisingly, the Director General of the British branch was about to marry the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Hanover because the Kingdom of Hanover was destroyed. Because of the opposition of the Parliament, she failed to successfully marry the Crown Prince of Hanover, who is exiled in the UK, so now Princess Alice has regained her freedom. Many people in the Netherlands even joked that because Princess Alice had expressed her approval of William IV, but the Anglo-Dutch marriage was not successful in the end, now facing Alexandra from Denmark, the opponent who intercepted her love and marriage, the latter, as the Director General of the International Women's League, suppressed Alice's identity as the director of the British branch, and once again defeated Princess Alice. Princess Alice has thus become a model of a double lose in love and career. This topic has become more and more intense and has become a joke among the people of the two countries. In the end, the British and Dutch governments and their respective royal families behind them had to stand up to stop it before it was calmed down. However, because of this, the hostility between the two countries seemed to begin to condense. This was an unexpected accident that William IV never expected. But soon, he had no energy to think about this matter. Because the statistics team of the Dutch Ministry of the Interior sent him a report, which made him happy for a long time. It turned out that from the international wars in recent years, the Netherlands has accepted more than 800,000 international immigrants. These people have been affected by the war and are now allocated to the Far East Australia by the Dutch Far East. Most of them are from the United States, with more than 300,000 Dutch, 200,000 Irish, 50,000 Russians, more than 100,000 Germans, and the rest are French, Italians, and Hispanics. Seeing this, William IV was very happy. This is international immigration. The reason why the United States was so strong for so long in the past was that international immigrants continued to join their country, bringing not only the demographic dividend but also the latest technologies from various countries. The future development of the Netherlands will become a first-line connection plan that brings together global talents in the Far East, Madagascar, Australia, East India, and finally enter the most critical talent link. As long as the population is large enough and the quality is strong enough, then do we still need to worry about the rise of the Netherlands? Chapter 214 Prussia's attack. As a symbol of the coexistence of competition and cooperation between Prussia and Austria, the Treaty of Gothenburg, signed by Austria, Prussia and Denmark in 1864 to stop the Schleswig War under the witness of various countries, can be regarded as the latest cooperation model between Austria and Prussia. But since it is called the coexistence of cooperation and competition, there is only competition with cooperation. The two countries have gradually penetrated other countries economically, and even the Kingdom of Bavaria, a country that once surrendered to the Austrian Empire, has begun to become a battlefield for the economic influence of Austria and Prussia. Therefore, a large part of the country's vested interests are unwilling to continue to follow Austria. This is why when Austria invaded Saxony, the Bavarian Palace gathered other countries to establish the West German Confederation. Although the signing of the Treaty of Gothenburg temporarily avoided the re-emergence of the dispute between Austria and Prussia, it was a temporary solution. This made the enemies in Austria and Prussia dissatisfied with the government's operation. Therefore, both countries are accumulating hatred. Prussia believes that Austria compromised, while Austria believes that Prussia made efforts to ease the relationship between Austria and Prussia. It is precisely because of this speculation that the conservative forces in each country began to launch a counterattack against the moderate side, which greatly deteriorated the relationship between the two countries. On November 4, 1865, the Prussian ambassador proposed to the Austrian Empire that the two countries conduct a comprehensive certification on the border issues of Schleswig and Holstein. But the Austrian Empire refused, because Austria should implement the current vague border. A deputy foreign minister of the country believed that as Austria joined the British camp, the relationship between Austria and Britain was affected. Prussia once again wanted to ease the relationship between Prussia and Austria, so it came to Vienna to request to clarify the relationship to avoid misjudgment. This made the top leaders in Vienna look complacent. It was like catching Prussia's pigtail. Therefore, the deputy minister who arranged the list, requiring the Prussian government to pay the Austrian Empire a huge compensation for the Schleswig War and repair the Austrian Empire's losses in the war. Austria can follow the previous Schleswig borderline that was excessively expanded to the south during the previous Danish rule, and Austria can restore the borderline before 1850. Faced with the arrogant attitude of the Austrian Empire and such unreasonable claims, the Prussian ambassador naturally would not agree, and left angrily. His news was sent back to Berlin. Berlin accused Austria of shameless behavior and claimed that even if it spent this huge amount of compensation to increase the cost of defense, it would not humiliate itself and spend a penny to beg Austria. The statement of the Bismarck government made the entire kingdom of Prussia boil. Everyone admired Bismarck's behavior and hated Austria to the extreme. The negotiations of the Prussian ambassador's public action failed, and the peace advocates in Prussia put the blame on him. He demanded that he should be punished for destroying the relationship between Prussia and Austria. However, Prime Minister Bismarck rejected this request and even promoted him to the position of Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs to show his support. This made the conservative Junker aristocracy in Prussia support Bismarck to the highest point. At this point, the hard forces in Prussia finally overwhelmed the peace advocates. Therefore, at the Prussian parliamentary meeting, the deputy minister who had just returned from Prussia read out the changes in the evolution process of Prussia and Austria over the years on behalf of the government, pointing out that the Austrian Empire would choose to insult Prussia to improve its position in the German Confederation when it had repeated conflicts with Prussia. This was a provocation and extreme insult to Prussia, and the Austrian Empire must pay the price for its behavior. So after the Prussian parliament had been discussing, Prussia was ready to respond strongly to this Austrian insult, and Prussia must also be prepared for war at any time and be ready to fight for Prussia's honor at any time. After the war machine is turned on, it is difficult to stop. So this time, after the Prussian hardline decision was passed by the parliament, on the border between the former Holstein, Prussian, and Schleswig, Austrian, Prussia began to actively launch multiple advancement strategies, causing Vienna to frequently receive a lot of information about the Schleswig crisis, but everyone, including Josephine Vienna, believed that this was just a bluff by the Bismarck government. Ignore it. On November 10, 1865, Prussian Prime Minister Bismarck made his public itinerary. He visited St. Petersburg in the eastern Baltic Sea. He greeted Alexander II on behalf of William I. After talks with Prime Minister Gorchakov of the Russian Empire, the two countries publicly supported each other. However, the alliance between the two countries, which made the Austrian Empire both physically and mentally, did not happen. Just when Bismarck was relieved, he returned to Berlin and did not make Austria's worries unnecessary. On November 14, 1865, Austria followed the Ottoman Empire and Britain to advance to Romania occupied by Tsarist Russia on the Balkan Peninsula, wanting to further repel the Tsarist Russian Empire. The Kingdom of Prussia suddenly launched an attack on Schleswig. Austria only deployed 30,000 people in Schleswig. This data is not too much, but it is not too little. However, in order to guard against the counterattack of the small country of Denmark, Vienna felt that 30,000 was enough. After all, Denmark's army after the war was less than 100,000. Vienna would never believe that Prussia would attack them. In just 3 days, Schleswig was taken. When Vienna reacted, Prussia had already deployed more than 200,000 troops in the west of Austria. At this time, more than two-thirds of Austria's national forces had been deployed in the east to guard against the Russian Empire and in the south to participate in driving out the Romanian occupation zone of the Russian Empire. Only one-third of the western and northern parts were in a very critical situation. The Austrian Empire condemned Prussia. Britain even asked Prussia to withdraw its troops immediately and return Schleswig to Austria. Britain stated that it would not recognize Prussia's position in Schleswig. However, what is surprising is that as Denmark signed the document, Christian IX said that it was an internal matter of the German Confederation and it had nothing to do with Denmark anymore. Denmark's neutrality was not affected. The same was true of Sweden's statement. The Russian Empire naturally hoped that Prussia would reduce the pressure it faced from the three countries. So Alexander II personally stood up to express his support for Prussia. Surprisingly, the Kingdom of Italy expressed support for Prussia's reasonable approach and stated that Italy demanded that Austria return Venice to Italy. Even Victor Emmanuel II ordered the Italian military to send more than 100,000 troops to the north of the Adriatic Bay to threaten the western part of the Austrian Empire. How could this happen? How dare Prussia do this? Joseph I felt cold sweat on his forehead. The evolution of the situation made him never expect it to be like this. Italy is actually involved. Archduke Rainer Ferdinand also felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. Chapter 215, Grand Duke of Australia? Prince of Orange. 1865, is a memorable day. The North American War continued, and the North continued to occupy the southern states of Tennessee and northern Mississippi, pretending to attack the South, making the South ready. In the Balkan Peninsula, the Russian Empire and the Allied forces of Britain, the Ottoman Empire and the Austrian Empire were fighting in southern Romania, where the Russian Empire currently had more than 200,000 troops. The Allied forces had 220,000, the Ottoman Empire had more than 130,000, the Austrian Empire had 40,000, and the remaining 50,000 British troops. The two sides were squeezed into the small space of southern Romania, and small fights continued, which could cause a huge war at any time. More than 100,000 troops were deployed in eastern Hungary to guard the eastern part of the Austrian Empire to prevent the possibility of the Russian Empire abandoning Romania and launching an attack here. More than 200,000 were deployed in the northern Austrian mainland. Among the 580,000 Austrian troops, 30,000 in Schleswig, so there were only 160,000 in the west and 50,000 in the south. Prussia had 630,000 troops. When the 200,000 troops from northern Austria attacked Prussia, Joseph I also became anxious. Prussia still had more than 400,000 troops that had not been used, which was a huge threat to the Austrian Empire. Italy in the south obviously wanted to take advantage of the situation and snatch Venice back. The 100,000 troops stationed in the south increased the possibility of Austria being attacked from all sides. Austria had no choice but to transfer 30,000 of Hungary's 100,000 troops to the south, and 80,000 against Italy's 100,000, which was not too different. On November 25, 1865, the whole country of the Netherlands was jubilant. Because on this day, the eldest son of King William IV and Queen Alexandra was born 5 kilograms 400 grams. Mother and child are healthy. William IV gave the newborn of the Dutch royal family the full name William Christian Albert. William IV canonized him as Prince of Nassau-Orange and led the Grand Duke of Australia at the same time. Although many people don't understand why William IV would make him the Grand Duke of Australia, a territory in the Far East, the title of Prince of Orange before he became the Crown Prince of the Dutch royal family has stabilized Prince Albert's position. There is no excessive questioning. The birth of a new bloodline in the Netherlands, and it is a male, is a major event worthy of universal celebration for the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Denmark, the Kingdom of Greece and the Duchy of Luxembourg. Because it means that the Netherlands and Luxembourg have successors, and Denmark can continue to consolidate its marriage with the Netherlands. Greece can naturally let the people of the country accept the rule of William III with peace of mind, and even prepare for his other second son to accept the Kingdom of Greece. Even with the appearance of William IV's descendants, the Greek government began to plan to make William II's second son Prince Frederick the Crown Prince of Greece in order to stabilize the restless hearts of the people. In short, the appearance of the next generation of the Dutch royal family this time has been welcomed by many people. Congratulatory telegrams from various countries are continuous, and even Siam in the Far East has congratulated William IV. However, this is just a small episode for various countries. Because of the mystery of the war, the eyes of the top leaders of various countries were still trapped, and it was difficult to move their eyes away. The Russian Empire seemed to have received divine help from Prussia and Italy, which was like the main attack. It actually focused on the defensive position of Austria in Romania, making the restless Austrian army beaten. Although the British army in the east had the upper hand, it could not suppress the opponent and could only maintain the status quo. The Ottoman Empire army in the middle was because although the weapons were not worse than those of the Russian army, they were much rougher in training. Because they were suppressed by the Russian army, if the British weapons were not advanced enough, they would have been suppressed by the Russian army. Therefore, in southern Romania, Austria in the west was quickly beaten back to the Serbian side. The Ottoman Empire and Britain continued to defend their positions. On December 1, 1865, Prussia launched an attack. Prussia launched an attack on the Duchy of Bohemia, one of the few allies of Austria at present. The Prussian army suddenly attacked. Chief of Staff Moltke ordered 3 corps to move eastward, and the 1st Corps moved to the Neisse River. The Second Army entered the area east of Görlitz, while the Elbe Army moved south along the Elbe River. The Elbe Army approached the right wing of the First Army. Eventually, they joined the First Army in Dresden. At this time, Chief of Staff Moltke learned that the Austrian army was in a tight spot in the south and was defeated by the Russian Empire and returned to the Principality of Serbia. So he made a prompt decision and ordered the Second Army to cross the Sudeten Mountains and advance to the southwest. The First Army and the Elbe Army marched along the narrow path of the Erzgebirge Mountains and marched south of the mountains. In this way, the Prussian army's pincer offensive, divided and attacked, destroyed the main force of the Austrian army under Benedict's rule in the Duchy of Bohemia. As Dresden and the Duchy of Bohemia were occupied by Prussia, the Austrian capital Vienna was exposed to Prussia at this time. Prussia used breech-loading rifles, which were easy to use. Soldiers could load their rifles while looking for cover, while Austrian soldiers used muzzle-loading rifles, but there was no cover when loading their rifles. Their strength was obvious. The Prussian Corps used the most developed railway network and telegraph in mobilizing and strategic deployment, while Austria was still using the old way of fighting, because Prussia was always one step ahead of Austria. In the Duchy of Bohemia, from Brig on the Oder River to Torg on the Elbe River, this 250-kilometer front allowed Prussia to assemble more than 180,000 corps and 70 artillery pieces on the European continent in a very short period of time. In terms of combat training, Prussia, which implemented a universal conscription system, was superior to the Austrian army, which implemented a volunteer system. Economically, Prussia was also far superior to Austria, with developed industry and dense railways. Most importantly, the commander this time was General Moltke, the chief of the Prussian General Staff, who formulated a plan that was a combination of spirit and form, which was very advantageous for Austria's passivity. One had been planning for a long time, and the other was caught off guard. Under such circumstances, it would be strange if Austria could win. Amsterdam, Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Privy Council had just finished its meeting, and William IV, who had just become a father, watched Chief of Staff Mark Rutte analyze the pros and cons of both sides in the current Austro-Prussian war. He nodded from time to time. Prime Minister Thorbecke said at this time, "Generally speaking, but the most important thing is that Austria will definitely lose this war. What's more, Austria has been dragged into the quagmire of the Balkan Peninsula and cannot extricate itself. Too much manpower and energy have been consumed there. Public opinion in their country has begun to get tired of the war. Ladies and gentlemen, I doubt that the battlefield between Austria and Prussia will last too long, because Austrian public opinion does not allow Joseph I to do so. At the same time, there are enemies in the east, west, south and north, and Joseph I is also an old fox. He knows that under the current circumstances, Austria will not be able to escape. So I think that on the battlefield in the Balkan Peninsula, Austria will soon withdraw their troops and return to defend their homeland. As for how long the Austro-Prussian War will last, it depends on the willpower of Joseph I. Chapter 216 Vienna. I want to fight Hungary. 1865. The international situation continued to evolve rapidly in the form of war, which overwhelmed all countries. In North America, the United States of America in the north, PK the Confederate States of America in the south, and Britain and Austria. In the Balkan Peninsula, the Russian Empire, PK the Ottoman Empire, Britain, and Austria. In Central Europe, after the Prussian-Danish War had just ended within the German Confederation, Prussia invaded the Kingdom of Hanover and Austria invaded Saxony. Both countries successfully won and expanded their territory. Austria has been engaged in 4 wars of different sizes in just 2 years, and public grievances have begun to emerge in the country. Especially when the Balkan Peninsula War and the North American War were still going on. Under the fierce attack of Romania, the Russian Empire deployed Austrian troops in Bulgaria and Serbia. Since the war began, more than 20,000 people have been killed and wounded, and more than half of them have been lost. When Austria faced a Prussian raid and successfully occupied the northern town of Sadova in Austrian territory, everyone in Vienna was panicked. At this time, how could they understand the so-called national strategic significance of Joseph I? They only thought about their own security needs to be guaranteed and not be threatened by Prussia's military. So Austria faced dissatisfaction from all sides, especially when Austria's domestic security was not guaranteed. It actually sent troops to fight abroad. The streets of Austria were full of anti-war demonstrations. In Vienna, one of the largest cities in Europe, More than 500,000 people took to the streets. Adding up other places, this demonstration exceeded tens of millions, which can be called the largest anti-war demonstration in Europe's history. The Austrian government finally couldn't stand the pressure. Joseph I was even afraid that it would turn anti-war into anti-royal rule and anti-Austrian cabinet. Therefore, with his consent, the Austrian Empire officially announced that it would withdraw its troops from North America and return to its homeland soon. On the Balkan Peninsula, Vienna also sent delegations to St. Petersburg, London, and Constantinople of the Russian Empire to explain Austria's position. But before waiting for the countries to express their views, Austria took action on its own. On December 12, 1865, the Austrian Empire officially withdrew its troops from Bulgaria and Serbia. The 20,000-man army was deployed to the southern border with Italy. The 3,000 Austrian troops in North America have also crossed the Atlantic and are about to enter the Mediterranean. So far, Austria's 2 foreign wars have ended in failure. Joseph I's ambitions have not been satisfied. He wanted to use this to strengthen relations with Britain, but in the end he did not succeed. Instead, he withdrew halfway, which made Britain dissatisfied. Therefore, in the current situation of Prussia's invasion of Austria, Britain did not express its support for Austria again, and expressed its dissatisfaction with Austria's withdrawal halfway by silence. This is naturally what the Bismarck government wants to see most. As a result, Prussia increased its offensive and crossed the source of the Elbe River at the northern end of Vienna. When Moltke came to Sadova, he began to attack Prague, a large city north of Vienna, from the north. The Austro-Prussian War actually broke out. After Joseph I withdrew from the two wars, he began to focus on dealing with the invasion of Prussia. On December 17, 1865, in order to maintain Austria's moral high ground, peace-loving image, and not an invader or the invaded, Austrian Prime Minister Archduke Rainer Ferdinand said at the Frankfurt German Confederation Parliament that Austria would still try to exercise restraint, and only complained to the Frankfurt German Confederation Parliament about Prussia's plan. Since Prussia had chosen to be an emperor with Austria, it no longer recognized the authority of the pro-Austrian Frankfurt Parliament. So when the parliament condemned Prussia's invasion and supported Austria's counterattack, Prussia's representatives in the parliament left angrily. On December 20, 1865, the Prussian government officially issued a declaration of war to Austrian power, and then sent a large number of troops to more openly incorporate Schleswig, which had been occupied before, from Holstein. Prussia then announced to the outside world that Schleswig belonged to the territory of the Kingdom of Prussia. Christian Ix of Denmark said that this had nothing to do with Denmark and he would not comment. Countries did not want to offend the powerful Prussia, so they acquiesced to Prussia's approach. Although Austria strongly opposed it, in the face of the established facts and the attitudes of various countries, it could only swallow the bitter pill, especially the attitude of Britain, which made Vienna miserable. The successive losses of Holstein, Bohemia and Sadova in northern Austria made Austria only able to formally face the reality that the war had come, so Austria transferred the main combat force to Prague and formed the first line of defense around it to block the Prussian army from moving south. On this line of defense, the Austrian Empire constantly recruited and mobilized a large number of troops to the north. Moreover, after the domestic propaganda that Prussia invaded Prague, Vienna would be under the city. Finally, under the resistance of the Austrians with a full sense of crisis, Austria successfully blocked the first wave of Prussian attacks in the Battle of Prague, but it also suffered heavy casualties. Both sides invested a large number of troops in this battle, Prussia more than 200,000, and Austria eventually exceeded 250,000. Although only a part of them went to the battlefield, the scale was more than 50,000, forming a scale of 100,000 people. In the end, Prussia suffered more than 16,000 casualties, while Austria suffered 21,000 casualties. When Austria was preparing for the next round of Prussian army attack led by Moltke, Joseph I received bad news. On December 23, the Prussian army launched sporadic attacks in Prague to cover up its purpose. General Moltke divided his troops into two groups and opened a new front in the east. Krakow, which is close to the Grand Duchy of Poland in the northeast of Austria, was occupied by Prussia. The telegrams sent back from there showed that the Prussian army had more than 50,000 people. After occupying Krakow, it has gone southwest and rushed to the city of Olomouc, which is in the southeast of Prague. If it is captured by the Prussian army, it will be more dangerous for Vienna than Prague, because Olomouc can support Prague and stop Vienna. At the same time, it can go directly southeast to Slovakia, the hinterland of Hungary, and can also invade Galicia all the way east. Therefore, Austria hurriedly sent a large army to Olomouc. Unfortunately, when the Austrian army arrived there, Prussia could not help but take Olomouc, and even ambushed it. After leaving behind 8,000 dead and wounded, the 50,000 Austrian troops were forced to retreat to the town in the south. Seeing this, Vienna could only plan to organize its army in the north, preparing for a battle with the Prussian army, and use the advantage of manpower to realize the desire to reverse the occupation. However, obviously facing such a rough strategic situation, the Prussian chief of staff Moltke used 3 corps and adopted a 2-wing flanking tactic, pretending to deploy a large army in Olomouc. In fact, the 50,000 troops had secretly transferred 40,000 Prussian troops to the south of Prague. However, Olomouc was bluffing and bombarding the Austrian positions, so that the other side didn't know. So when Austria thought that the Prussian army wanted to occupy this key position forever, the Prussian army stabbed him like a sharp knife in the south of Prague on December 27, 1865, causing chaos in the rear of Prague, and the Prussian army in the north naturally linked up. Under the joint attack from the north and the south, the Austrian army was demoralized and did not understand the number of Prussian troops in their rear. The 250,000-man army was defeated by the Prussian army of similar size. The Battle of Prague was one of the largest battles in European history. Although the war was short, the number of troops involved was almost 500,000. In just 2 days, the Prussian army suffered more than 39,000 casualties, while the Austrian army suffered more than 64,000 casualties. The death toll on both sides exceeded 100,000, which means that one person died almost every 2 seconds. This made all European countries furious, especially small countries such as Denmark and Belgium, whose total number of troops was similar to that of the Prussian army. It can be said that after World War I, the national defense was almost exhausted. Therefore, they expressed neutrality and were unwilling to intervene in the war between Austria and Prussia. The West German Confederation led by the Kingdom of Bavaria once again expressed that it would not take a position between Austria and Prussia and expressed its willingness to promote reconciliation negotiations between the two countries. Unfortunately, there was no response from the two countries. However, after this battle, Prussia was also somewhat exhausted and obviously hoped to get a breathing time to digest the results of the war. With Prague and Olomouc being taken by Prussia, Czechoslovakia was gone. Austria lost nearly 100,000 people. The territory was lost to Czechoslovakia at the northern frontier of Vienna. At this time, Joseph I had to admit that Austria was much worse than Prussia in terms of combat effectiveness. I really regret that I attacked Saxony at the beginning. Joseph I looked at the Kingdom of Bavaria and other small principalities in the west on the map, his face full of regret. Archduke Rainer Ferdinand also regretted it. At this moment, Austria found itself isolated and helpless. Bismarck planned this a long time ago. Although it seems to be a visit, it is associated with the recent frequent actions of Prussia, but in fact everyone knows that this is the answer. Berlin. Looking at the expansion of Prussia's territory circled by Bismarck on the map, William I's pride rose sharply. He thought about Bismarck and said, "Next, should we attack Galicia in the east or Vienna in the west?" No, Bismarck shook his head mysteriously and said, "We should attack central Hungary, because in this way, Joseph I will feel pain." Attack Hungary? Wouldn't it hurt more to attack Vienna? William I looked at Bismarck in confusion. The latter slowly explained the reason and asked for recommendation votes and monthly tickets. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217, Revolt against the Austrian Empire? The war between Austria and Prussia continued. Many people thought that after Prussia took Prague and Olomouc, the Prussian army would go directly south from the entire north to attack Vienna. However, everyone was wrong. Prussia was defending these two places tightly, but unexpectedly, it attacked Hungary with its main force. The Prussian army sent 50,000 troops to attack Kosice in Hungary, later a Slovak city. Because it was located in a small area of Austria south of the Polish Duchy of the Russian Empire, Austria pushed the main force of the army to Lviv in Galicia on the front line to confront the threat of the Russian Empire on the front line, with more than 150,000 troops. However, because the troops were too concentrated, there was a shortage of troops between Vienna. Therefore, no one expected that Moltke would come up with such a surprise move and actually took Kosice in a short time. This shocked the whole of Austria. Because the loss of Kosice is more threatening than all Olomouc, it may be that if Prussia takes it, Vienna, which is located between Vienna in the west of Austria and Galicia in the east, will be cut off from Lviv. Therefore, Kosice cannot be lost. On December 30, 1865, 60,000 Austrians and 50,000 Prussians fought a battle in Kosice, Hungary. The gunfire between the two countries started at 8 o'clock in the morning of the same day. At first, Austria had a relatively large advantage because it was the defending side, and there were also many military support in the towns in the south. From 9 o'clock in the morning to about 13 o'clock in the afternoon, Austria had been using fierce artillery fire to suppress Prussia. Later, surprisingly, a 30,000-strong Prussian Second Army arrived on the battlefield, and the situation gradually reversed. Prussia seemed to have a plan in advance. The Prussian army built a wall of combat power to defend the Austrian army from breaking out and counterattacking with 3 routes on the left, middle and right. They also used the standard rifle of the Dreiser needle gun, newly developed by Austria and Prussia to quickly defeat the Austrian army whose formation had been in chaos. Faced with the increasingly fierce offensive of Prussia, the Austrian battlefield commander Ludwig von Benedict was unable to stabilize the morale of the army, especially some soldiers between Hungarians and Austrians. This resulted in the troops under his command being able to fight on their own. Although the battle was remarkable, they were ultimately unable to withstand the Prussian army, which had an advantage in tactics and equipment power. In the end, at 1600 hours that afternoon, Benedict ordered a full retreat. With the help of artillery firepower and cavalry cover, Benedict's 25,000 remnants of the Austrian army withdrew from the battlefield and retreated to the central Hungarian city of Miskolc. Austria was captured by the Prussians again. This put increasing pressure on Vienna. The news of the Russian Empire's unusual movements in Galicia in the east has caused Vienna to be in danger. But if Prussia gets the help of the Russian Empire and cooperates with Prussia on the Polish border, then the entire eastern Galicia of Austria will be in real danger. London, 10 Downing Street, British Prime Minister's Office. Now the 3 leaders of the Whig Party, Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston, and Foreign Secretary Russell are meeting with the Chancellor of the Exchequer Gladstone, who has chosen the next generation of the Whig Party, to discuss the dilemma that Britain has recently faced. Viscount Palmerston has been particularly troubled recently. Queen Victoria had just arranged for her second daughter, Princess Alice, to marry the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Hanover, but before the marriage took place, the Kingdom of Hanover was destroyed by the Kingdom of Prussia. Saxony was originally prepared by Queen Victoria for her 6th daughter, Princess Louise, but before it started, the Austrian Empire also learned bad things from Prussia and actually sent troops to occupy it. This made Queen Victoria very angry, and Viscount Palmerston was also very helpless. As these royal princes and princesses grew up, and in the UK, they began to be dissatisfied with the practice of royal marriages with royal families in other European countries. British nobles even said that royal marriages should be conducted in the country, rather than choosing foreign marriages. Only in this way can the royal family be truly localized and capture the hearts of all British people who are loyal to the royal family. Viscount Palmerston also agreed with this. After all, the Britishization of the heirs can ensure that the inheritance rights remain in the UK, rather than being inherited by foreign princes and princesses as before, which would reduce the cohesion of the country. At that time, Queen Victoria's attitude was neither to refuse nor to agree. But this was enough for the British nobles to hear the news and began to propose to the royal family the idea of marrying the princess home. This made Queen Victoria very embarrassed. And the unfavorable war made her even more irritable. Viscount Palmerston could understand the Queen's difficulties. The successive losses in America have destroyed Britain's prestige. The practice of blocking Tsarist Russia in the Balkan Peninsula was due to the recent withdrawal of Austria, which put both Britain and the Ottoman Empire under tremendous pressure. The French Napoleon III sitting back and watching the situation from the sidelines has clearly shown Britain that he will not participate in the Balkans and let Britain deal with it on its own. This approach is not good for Britain, a country that has always liked to calculate others. As a result, anti-war voices have also appeared in Britain. Although they are not loud, they have the tendency to start a prairie fire. They should be extinguished as soon as possible, otherwise it will be difficult to clean up the mess later. British Finance Minister Gladstone Russell said, "What is Bismarck, the newly rising guy, thinking? It's fine if he just wants to take over Schleswig, but he dares to reach out to Austria. I can't figure out what this guy is thinking." Viscount Palmerston looked at the next generation successor of the Whig Party whom he had chosen. Russell chose to go before Viscount Palmerston and said, "When Bismarck was the ambassador to France, I met him because of Belgium's independence. He is a shrewd man, very persistent in his goals, and has a plan for doing things." He sighed. No one knew it before. Prussia had the ability to attack Schleswig and Holstein, but it wanted to drag Austria into it, and even gave up the position of the protagonist. But people once thought that Prussia was forced by public opinion, so Prussia stood in front to protect it. But now we still find that we are all wrong. We are all wrong. The Bismarck government was actually used to consume Austria's military strength, and it had a legitimate reason. After that, he deliberately dragged Austria into the German Confederation to reconcile and form an alliance, and together with Austria, he plotted against the small country inland, Germany, and guided Austria to seize Saxony, Austria's original ally, which destroyed Austria's image. Hanover, the Prussian University of Technology, has always supported Austria in the German Confederation. U2, Prussia is digging at the foundation of Austria's alliance system, but Austria doesn't care about Prussia's calculations. The participation of North America in the war and the outbreak of the Balkan Peninsula have caused the combat effectiveness of the Austrian army to drop sharply after continuous wars. Prussia has really grasped it this time. Austria is not in danger of national destruction, Viscount Palmerston sighed. "The only thing I'm afraid of is that there are two-hearted people in the Austrian Empire. Hungary is unwilling to live under someone else's roof." Gladstone and Russell heard this. Their eyes flashed slightly. The Netherlands. William IV also thought that Hungary might take this opportunity, maybe. However, will Bismarck in Berlin really do this? Chapter 218, Made in the Netherlands, must be a top-quality product. Since 1857, the Far East has achieved rapid development in the past 9 years with the strong support of William IV. The British-ruled Malaya Archipelago is mainly committed to vigorously developing the large estate economy. The Dutch East Indies in the south focuses on the development of industry and commerce. Therefore, under such a completely different attitude, the rulers of the two places naturally attach different importance to the development of the economy. Therefore, with the development of two different models, after the watershed of 1857, the industrial development of the two countries, the northern Malay Archipelago is far less rapid than the southern East Indies. Jane Simcock, a senior official of the East Indies province, has also been very troubled recently. Because as Australia and New Guinea became Dutch territories, the west coast of the Netherlands has concentrated the main economic development on Australia. Now, when Dutch European companies begin to develop in the Far East, they are no longer the first choice for the East Indies such as Jakarta. This puts a lot of pressure on him. Also under pressure is the former Prime Minister of New Guinea, Jane Jacob Barkhausen. Previously, because Europe transferred the supply chain of the military industry to the Far East, it was mainly concentrated on Paradise Island in the northwest of New Guinea, which made New Guinea the largest and most comprehensive militarized industrial base in the Far East. However, with the development of the Australian continent, many military enterprises began to move to safer places such as South Australia. This caused the economic development of New Guinea to slow down. The two looked at each other and saw each other's helplessness. However, when they thought that this was a national policy, they thought of the arrangements made by William IV before. Many people in Europe would never have thought that we would invest so many resources in the development of the Far East. If we develop like this, even in less than 10 years, the economic development level of our Far East will only be comparable to that of a few countries in Europe, such as Britain, France, and Prussia. It will be more advanced than the Russian Empire, Sweden and other countries that attach importance to agriculture, said Simcock. New Guinea province senior official Rockhuizen also said, yes, with the development of the Far East, the Kingdom of the Netherlands will be free from the constraints of its small area and will step into the status of a great power from now on. Unlike today, we see wars everywhere, but the Netherlands is not easy to touch. So, this is why everyone is developing the Far East. It's all for the future of the Netherlands, the two said at the same time. At the same time, they told each other about their ideas for planning the economic development of their own territories. At the same time, in the Far East, there are more than just these two senior officials discussing the economic development here. From their rulers to the common people, they are all investing in the vigorous development of the Far East. Many small flour mills and other food processing companies are rapidly established in Queensland, Australia, a major grain province. Therefore, this place has become the largest scale of the Far East grain planting and processing food industry chain. It is even the most industrialized agricultural industry in the whole of Asia. It gathers the most advanced food processing technology in Europe. Therefore, even a lot of Latin American grain is shipped here for processing and then invested in Asia to earn high processing and finished product fees. People take food as their first priority, and it can be said that it has been used to the extreme. Cotton is also the largest planting product in Queensland. It has become the largest clothing industry base in the Far East. Cotton compression plants continue to appear here. The largest grain processing plant, clothing factory and rope factory in the Netherlands are also located in the capital, Brisbane. In addition to the military industry chain, the timber industry is another industry in New Guinea province. The paper mills here are suppliers all over the country. Military parts are even more famous in Asia. Western Australia has developed mineral mining and processing industries based on its own resource advantages. The most representative one is the Perth Iron Works in Perth. It currently has more than 5,000 employees. Other minerals in the surrounding area are also being developed. Coupled with supporting facilities, the scale of the industry is huge, even in the European continent. Last year, the turnover of the factory, which had only been in operation for 1 year, exceeded 5 million Dutch guilders, $1 million, 200,000 pounds, and no one would think that its scale would stop expanding. The most prominent is Sydney's textile industry. Relying on the abundant water resources here and the unique natural advantages of being close to the raw material production base in Queensland. Starting from 1863, Sydney built the first factory, and the business was very prosperous, so many places followed suit. Soon after, other places began to follow suit, and even Queensland began to show this trend, which promoted the development of Australia's textile manufacturing industry. In particular, William Group built a large textile factory in Sydney, which brought huge financial benefits to Sydney. In just 2 years, the William Group's factory has more than 10,000 people, and the entire Australian textile industry workers are only 30,000. Because the company's finished products are manufactured for Europe, South America, the Far East and other continents, it can be said that it is manufacturing export products. William Group is said to expand its scale as needed. This makes no one deny that the cotton industry and textile manufacturing industry will be more prosperous in the future. These newly emerging companies have injected great economic vitality into Australia. William IV looked at the report in front of him, and he could imagine the following booming construction boom in his mind. What kind of scene is that? However, compared with the past, the development of various provinces is actually faster, especially the Jakarta region where the Netherlands had invested the most before. For example, Jakarta is still the largest distribution center for textile and timber industries, because it is closer to the Qing dynasty, a large market country with a population of more than 300 million in the north, and closer to the consumer market, as well as Japan. In fact, the East Indies belonged to the Netherlands the earliest, and its industrial development has only been around for nearly 10 years, so it is far from being comparable to the current South Australia, which is a latecomer. 50% of the manufacturing products in the Far East are mainly from the East Indies, of which 30% come from Jakarta. Moreover, it also provides the machines, skilled workers and technicians needed for the production of textiles, as well as support for the commercial and financial industries for Australia in the south. After all, Sydney and Melbourne in Australia have just started construction and have not yet fully acquired the ability to enter the role. In short, with Jakarta as the center, the East Indies still dominates the industrial development of the Far East. Because the East Indies were under the attention of William IV, the North always attached importance to the development of industry and commerce, and thus entered a period of rapid growth in 1857. As far as William knew, the value of manufactured goods output was less than 5 million Dutch guilders before 1857, but by 1864, 8 years later, the figure had reached 500 million Dutch guilders, $100 million, 20 million pounds, and 40% of this came from Jakarta. The over-centralized development made William IV want to spread the industrialization process rather than concentrate it. After all, if the British went crazy and sent warships there one day and bombarded it for a day or two, the losses would be huge. Therefore, the process of Australia's industrial migration this time was comprehensive. The wars in Europe and America were just the best time for the Netherlands to develop. Because companies including all countries need a good environment and supply chain, and the Netherlands can provide such an environment in the Far East. With the intentional guidance and help of the William Group, the industrial system there developed rapidly, was good at accepting technological innovation, and the development and utilization of natural resources. In terms of the development of this industrial system, the coal fields in Australia became the key, just like the development of the coal mining industry in East India supported the East Indian economy. As long as the development of coal mines keeps up, it can be continuously shipped to various places at low prices after the construction of the Circum-Australian Railway is successfully completed, providing heat energy for Australia's capacity and metallurgical industry and steam power for the operation of machines. Especially when Australia's water resource production capacity cannot be broken through, steam engines can provide new kinetic energy for expanding production. Moreover, with the widespread use of steam, Australia has gained more space in factory site selection, and the production organization within the factory has become more flexible. William IV carefully read the report of the Ministry of Industry. In terms of technological innovation, the Netherlands has also done very well in recent years. From 1857 to 1864, various inventions such as enhanced sewing machines, bearings, cylinder presses, and plastic vulcanization appeared. Among them, plastics have become the largest specialized industrial products in the Netherlands, and the finished products are popular in Europe and even the world. It has become the largest single export product of the Netherlands. But of course there is more than that. The Netherlands has also seen improved devices and equipment such as spiral-making machines, matches, pencils, and soda water. This has helped the Netherlands become one of the strongest equipment exporters in Europe. Driven by the William Group, Dutch manufacturers have turned these inventions and creations into products in order to gain benefits. As the market continues to expand, major Dutch companies are eager to use various new technologies to expand production in order to make more profits. It was under the promotion of William IV that the Netherlands formed this trend of technological innovation and practicality. The pursuit of technological innovation in the Dutch manufacturing industry has given Dutch industrial products an important position in markets around the world. The precision instruments such as watches, pistols, and locks manufactured are particularly outstanding, and have even gradually formed a world-leading position and become high-end products trusted by the world. Especially at the Third World Expo in Paris last time, it left a deep impression on the so-called most fashionable Europeans. So merchants from all over Europe asked about these industrial products, and finally even sent people to visit the Rotterdam and Amsterdam factories. They were shocked by the product quality control and standardization of the William Group, so a large number of European merchants immediately ordered a large number of watches, firearms, locks, etc. It can be said that it is very important for the Dutch industrial products to be promoted to high-end brands. This is also the result that William IV wanted. For industrial products, the brand name is the most important. In the past, there were many similar products with similar quality, but because of different brands, the selling price increased by more than double. This is the brand effect. The Netherlands led by him will naturally not give up this positioning. Products made in the Netherlands must be high quality. Chapter 219 Royal Netherlands Academy of Sciences. In terms of the use of natural resources, if the Netherlands lacks local resources, then the Netherlands, which owns East India, Australia and Central Africa, is the country with the most resources. The national policy of the Netherlands is to develop them. As the territory of the Netherlands continues to expand and develop in parallel, the Dutch discover new resources in the Far East and Africa every month, and quickly develop and utilize them. At the same time, the expansion of land also provides the necessary conditions for the development of Dutch agriculture. And the expansion of agriculture also provides more sufficient materials for the development of industrialization. In 1864, 8 of the 10 fastest growing industries in the Netherlands were developed with agricultural products as raw materials. Therefore, while noting the rapid development of Dutch industry during this period, William IV never ignored the role of Far East expansion in promoting Dutch industry. At the same time, William IV also observed that with the development, the Dutch people's transformation of companies also further stimulated the rapid growth of Dutch industry. Before 1857, when his father William III was in power in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the government would reject the Dutch science and technology innovators, later called scientists, requests for licenses from the Kingdom of the Netherlands on the grounds of unconstitutionality because they wanted to establish a national science promotion agency of their own. William III was relatively conservative and was afraid that another party-like interest group would appear, adding another group that was already hindering his royal power in Parliament. However, after William travelled through time in 1857, under his persuasion, his father William II finally gave up this control, and the Parliament passed the constitutional bill, so this prejudice in the Kingdom of the Netherlands disappeared. In 1859, the Parliament of the Kingdom of the Netherlands unanimously passed the decree to establish the Royal Academy of Sciences promoted by William IV, who was then the Crown Prince. The establishment of this Royal Academy of Sciences made Dutch scientists very happy, and they joined in one after another. This was also the biggest boost to the coordinated development of the William Group. With science and technology, other factors naturally became the key to the development of the Netherlands. In particular, the role of population in promoting the development of Dutch industry. The influx of foreign immigrants provided sufficient labor for the Dutch industry. Among them, the European mainland was mainly Swedish and Norwegian, and the Far East came from all directions. Even in Europe, the capital injection from other European countries and the capital operation in the Netherlands have injected strong impetus into the development of the Netherlands. The large amount of savings of the Dutch and the status of Amsterdam as the third largest financial center after London and New York provided a lot of capital for the industrial development of the Netherlands. The improvement of transportation in the Netherlands, population growth, elimination of tariff barriers and relatively high per capita wealth all provided a market for Dutch industrial products. Of course, there is also the market development of the Netherlands in the Far East, and the trade of industrial products with the Russian Empire. It is under the combined effect of such conditions that the Dutch industry has achieved a rapid leap in quality and quantity. With the frequent outbreak of wars around the world, the role of this resonance effect in the Netherlands will become more obvious. When the wars in various places stop, they will find that the Netherlands has completed the industrialization transformation and become the world's top industrial power. William IV said coldly, "For the warring countries, war means death, but for the consuming war countries, war means opportunity." And the Netherlands is an opportunist, and it is the one who creates opportunities with his own hands. Therefore, the world war must continue so that the Netherlands can profit from it. As long as the war continues to burn in various countries, immigration from various countries will not be interrupted. The Netherlands can even implement a talent-only immigration strategy and a labor strategy immigration, which will make high-end European talents flock to the Netherlands and the Far East. Thinking of this, William IV became more determined not to let North America calm down. Because compared to the Far East, the American Federation in North America seems to be more suitable for European immigrants. If they stop fighting, it will be the biggest opponent for the talent strategy formulated by the Netherlands. Therefore, the American Civil War must continue, and Europe needs it even more. At present, the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia have started fighting. Except for the Ottoman Empire in the Balkan Peninsula, only the Austrian Empire has been attacked in the homeland of the European powers. The homelands of other countries have not experienced the war. This is a loss for the Netherlands. The Ottoman Empire is short of talents, and it is difficult for them to immigrate to the Far East. Only when the war spreads to other countries can the Netherlands grab talents. Just like this time when Prussia invaded the Kingdom of Hanover and the Austrian War, the Dutch intelligence agency, which had started to lay out early, hunted many talents in these two places, and now they have been sent to Australia. As a European power, Austria is a huge talent pool for the Netherlands, which is the most attractive place for the Netherlands. As far as he knows, because of the Austrian War, the famous musician Johann Strauss, who is very much loved by his wife Queen Alexandra, has immigrated to Australia. William IV has also heard this guy's works. His songs such as The Blue Danube, Stories from the Vienna Woods and The Voice of Spring are all good. However, William IV prefers the famous Hungarian musician Franz Liszt, whose family just fled to Amsterdam for refuge after Prussia just entered Hungary. William IV was very interested in his Prelude in 1848, Mazeppa in 1851, Piano Sonata in B minor in 1852, Dante in 1855. However, he was most interested in his two major etudes from his early years, 12 transcendental etudes and 6 Paganini etudes. Austrian musicians are famous, and Hungarians are not bad either, but William IV naturally also had his eyes on scientists from both places. If Sydney or Amsterdam becomes a music mecca, it would not be bad. After all, holding a music festival every year in the future would be enough to attract the attention of various countries and increase the cultural communication capabilities of the Netherlands. Is it more beautiful than letting the seeds of talent planted by other countries grow up and then the Netherlands harvests them? Unfortunately, the largest talent pool in Europe is Britain, France, and Germany, established by Prussia. In the era when the national pride of these three places is overflowing, the Netherlands has very few opportunities to take action. William IV suddenly laughed. Britain and Prussia are a little difficult, but what about France? When William I of Prussia occupied Paris in 1871, it was the best opportunity. It seems that this is enough. There are other talents among the scientists in Paris. Napoleon III, you can help me continue to train them. I will come to take them away in 6 years. William IV even thought greedily, Britain cannot be too safe at home. This is not good for the Netherlands. The war must burn there. Submarines may be the most powerful weapon to defeat their powerful maritime forces. Only in this way can Prussia fight with Britain. Yes, the Netherlands can help Prussia in submarines. Let the future German Empire fight with Britain so that the Netherlands can pick up talents. After thinking this through, William IV felt relieved. As long as the war between the United States, Britain, France, Prussia, and Tsarist Russia spread, the Netherlands would have endless opportunities. Taking advantage of the situation has always been William IV's important style of doing things in this war-torn era. Chapter 220. The German Confederation is unified. 1866, the Russian Empire's 200,000 troops in Poland approached Galicia, which ended the battle plan of Lviv's 150,000 Austrian troops who were about to withdraw to attack the Prussian army in the rear. At this time, the international community vaguely discovered that something was wrong. Is there any interaction between Russia and Prussia on the war plane? When thinking about this, many people's faces changed drastically. Especially Britain, the Austrian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. If Russia really allied with Prussia, then this war would be bad. In fact, they are similar to what most people guessed and saw. Austria's repeated betrayals have made the Russian Empire lose trust in them, and the emergence of Prussia is an opportunity for Russia. Yes, anyway, Alexander I thought so. On January 4, 1866, the Russian Empire sent a high-profile representative to visit Berlin, and Prime Minister Bismarck met with the envoy. After that, the two countries jointly listed Austria's crimes over the years to express their dissatisfaction with the Austrian Empire. On January 6, 200,000 Russians attacked Lviv, a major city in the east of Austria. At the same time, the Russian Empire launched a more fierce counterattack against Britain and the Ottoman Empire in Wallachia, southern Romania, on the southern Balkan Peninsula. The latter two countries were defeated. Austria was attacked by Prussia and the Russian Empire, and finally the 150,000 were killed and wounded. Prussia occupied Krakow in western Galicia, while Lviv in the east fell into the hands of the Russian Empire. Since it was launched during the day, the battle lasted for 2 days and 1 night from the daytime of January 6 to the daytime of January 7. Prussia successively invested 100,000 people, Austria 150,000 people, and the Russian Empire in the east overwhelmingly claimed to have dispatched 200,000 people. Prussia suffered 18,000 casualties, Austria more than 61,000 casualties, more than 60,000 prisoners, and the Russian Empire more than 32,000. After this battle, Joseph I of the Austrian Empire was powerless and unwilling to fight. So Joseph I sent 2 special envoys to Nuremberg in the Kingdom of Bavaria and Paris in the French Empire to request mediation. The Kingdom of Bavaria naturally wanted to keep things quiet. The Prussian army was too powerful, and the West German Confederation where the Kingdom of Bavaria was located did not want to face Prussia because it was too powerful now. They needed a role to check and balance Prussia, so Nuremberg quickly sent a special envoy to visit Berlin. Napoleon III of the French Empire originally wanted to wait and see, watching the Russian Empire and the British Ottoman Empire continue to fight. And the war between neighboring Prussia and Austria was more in line with France's strategy of attacking nearby and making friends far away. Therefore, it was hoped that Prussia and Austria would both suffer losses. Moreover, some time ago, Bismarck also agreed with Olivier that as long as France did not participate in Prussia's war against Austria, Bismarck was willing to make concessions to France on the issue of the Lorraine region. Bismarck even hinted that Prussia might also give up the Rhine province that the French Empire had always been thinking about. This made Napoleon III very excited. Therefore, from the beginning, he had no intention of mediation. As for the war in the Balkans, watching Britain lose troops in the war was the most enjoyable thing for him recently. Napoleon III was not afraid of a war with Alexander II's Tsarist Russian Empire. The Tsarist Russian Empire and France were separated by Prussia and the Austrian Empire. As long as Prussia and Austria remained neutral, a full-scale war between France and the Tsarist Russian Empire would be unlikely to occur. If fighting in the Balkans or the Black Sea, France actually had a naval advantage, but the battlefield and the scale of the war launched by France was also very limited, just like the United Kingdom this time. However, Napoleon III did not benefit from fighting the Tsarist Russian Empire in this way, so France, which did not participate in the war, was one of the final winners. Because the Holy Alliance, which was once an anti-French alliance formed by Austria, Prussia, Tsarist Russia, and Britain, which was confirmed by the Vienna Conference in 1815, has been disbanded after such a war. The French Empire is no longer threatened by the four countries, and the Quadruple Alliance Treaty is far away. France still wanted to continue watching the show, but seeing that the Russian Empire actually cooperated with Prussia in this way was beyond Napoleon II's imagination. If the two countries formed an alliance, then Prussia's threat to France would rise sharply. This is very dangerous for Paris. So Napoleon III quickly sent an important person to Berlin. But the important person was still on the way and had not yet arrived in Berlin when Napoleon III received the latest war situation. Oh my God! Prussia actually launched an attack on the Duchy of Hesse, a member of the West German Confederation next to the Kingdom of Bavaria. On January 8, 1866, it took only one morning for the Duchy of Hesse to be captured by Prussia. Under the unstoppable charge of 50,000 Prussian troops, the Grand Duke of the Duchy of Thuringia next to the Duchy of Hesse collectively took the lead in surrendering. Following suit, the Grand Duchy of Oldenburg and the Duchy of Brunswick in the South German Confederation and the West German Confederation, and several small German Confederation states in southern Germany surrendered to Prussia. So, under the stunned eyes of Napoleon III, the Southern German Confederation actually collapsed like a landslide, and fragments appeared in front of him in an instant. In the end, in the entire Southern German Confederation, only the Kingdom of Bavaria and the Duchy of Nassau were still standing in front of the Prussian army. On January 10, 1866, William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands appealed to Prussia not to attack the Duchy of Nassau. For this reason, King William I of Prussia agreed to the request of the King of the Kingdom of the Netherlands at a press conference. This surprised all countries. But when I think of the close relationship between the Netherlands and Prussia over the years, it is understandable. And William IV's concern is understandable. Because the current royal family of the Kingdom of the Netherlands comes from the Duchy of Nassau, it can be said that the Duchy of Nassau is the ancestral land of the Dutch royal family. If the ancestral land is occupied by Prussia, then although William IV will not cause a major blow, at least his image will be damaged. Therefore, William IV hurriedly stood up to express his concern, on the one hand to stop the argument that the Duchy of Nassau would not help, and on the other hand to show that he had tried his best. William I was very respectful, and William IV got what he wanted, so the Duchy of Nassau was preserved. As for how to deal with the relationship between the Duchy of Nassau and the Netherlands in the future, that is a matter for the future. At least, their dependence on the Netherlands will only increase. At most, it will be like Italy, with a country within a country on the territory. Seeing that the duchies in the south surrendered one after another, the duchies in the North German Confederation also expressed their willingness to join the rule of the Kingdom of Prussia. William I naturally would not object, so he retained many rights of the duchies, but the military power must be in his hands, which was also a happy ending. So the entire central region began to become Prussian territory to the north. Now there are only the Duchy of Nassau in the central part, the Kingdom of Bavaria in the southeast, and the already broken Austrian Empire. As the Prussian camp expanded, not only Britain, but also Napoleon III was very uneasy. But surprisingly, Victor Emmanuel II of Italy actually took advantage of the situation. Italy actually chose to join Prussia's attack on Austria at this time. Victor Emmanuel II was also engaged in a war of unification at this time. Seeing that Austria was beaten to a pulp by Prussia, he was naturally moved. In order to take the opportunity to drive away the Austrians who had occupied Venice for a long time, Victor Emmanuel II decided to form an alliance with Prussia to attack Austria with the Kingdom of Sardinia as the core. This alliance was jointly announced by the Italian ambassador to Berlin and Bismarck. Now, Britain, who was buried in the war in the Balkan Peninsula, and Napoleon III, who aimed to reap the benefits of the fishermen, could no longer sit still. Because, at this time, Italy was no longer playing around, but was really serious, not a blank bullet. On January 14, 1866, Italy launched an attack on Austria, and the two countries fought the Battle of Lissa in the Gulf of the Adriatic, which made future generations shine. The Kingdom of Italy did not disappoint, and their navy was finally defeated. On the battlefield on land, the game between Italy and Austria took place in Cusco. Austria still won the battle. Emmanuel II wrote in Rome and Milan with a black face. He said that he would not give up the idea of retaking Venice. So Italy and Austria continued the Second Land War in Basica. This time, the Italians finally won, which saved Emmanuel I's face and the cold sweat finally disappeared. Prussia's southward expansion momentum made Britain and France uneasy. If Prussia occupied the entire German Confederation, then Prussia would become a giant monster capable of competing with France. Napoleon III now regretted that he did not participate in the reconciliation earlier. Even if it was a reconciliation at this moment, Prussia's territory would have grown. He was worried because there was no time that made him worry about Prussia's strength like now. A neighbor who is too strong is a possible weakness for them. This is unacceptable to Napoleon III, who has always been high profile and proud. However, in order to make Prussia fulfill Bismarck's verbal promise, Napoleon III sent people to Berlin to ask Prussia to fulfill its original promise as soon as possible and cede Lorraine and the Rhine province to the French Empire. As for what France should do after getting these two places, it is not something Prussia can interfere with. However, he thought too much. Because Berlin did not respond immediately, but pushed its army to the southeast kingdom of Bavaria and the small countries next to it. On January 20, 1866, the Duchy of Württemberg and the Duchy of Baden all surrendered to Prussia, and Prussia finally took them down. However, there are also regrets, because Napoleon III saw that Berlin did not respond, so he sent a large army to assemble at the border of the Duchy of Switzerland. Under the pressure of more than 50,000 troops, Prussia did not march into Switzerland, and finally the Duchy of Switzerland was retained. Prussia and France formed a confrontation in the south. But the Kingdom of Bavaria in the east was not as lucky as Switzerland. Because the Kingdom of Bavaria was a big country besides Prussia and Austria, many people thought that a war was about to come. But everyone thought too much. In the face of the Prussian army, the King of Bavaria, who was facing Austria's own difficulties, unexpectedly, King Ludwig I expressed his submission to William I based on the idea of conquering the entire German Confederation as soon as possible. William I accepted this letter of submission that was not a surrender. So far, the grand plan launched by the Bismarck government to unify the German Confederation has finally been completed. As for how Prussia will face the disabled Austrian Empire and the irritable French Empire next, the Bismarck government has its own plans. Chapter 221 The 7-Week War just ended. In the war between Hungary and Prussia, and the fierce war with the Russian Empire in Galicia, the Austrian Empire was no longer able to launch a new strong offensive. Under such circumstances, making peace with Prussia as soon as possible was the only option. Compared with Prussia, the Russian Empire and Italy were outsiders outside the German Confederation. So, on January 25, 1866, Joseph I sent the Austrian Empire's foreign minister Reisberg to Berlin. This time Reisberg was very low-key, and Joseph I's approach was accepted by the Prussian government. Since the beginning of the war, Prussia has been victorious due to the implementation of the plan. The Prussian army has a clear advantage over the Austrian army because of the success of industrialization. Then Bismarck wanted to avoid excessive intervention from France and the Russian Empire, especially when the Russian Empire had invaded eastern Galicia. Prussia did not want the Russian Empire to take too much advantage. At the same time, Bismarck also had concerns about the Russian Empire. Therefore, he dissuaded William I from continuing to attack and quickly negotiated peace with Joseph I of Austria. William I naturally agreed. The current result is definitely what he had been looking forward to. He was also afraid of changes and new incidents. So William I pretended to accept the mediation of French Emperor Napoleon II and met with Joseph I in Prague, which was now occupied by Prussia. The meeting in Prague marks that the Prussian and Austrian empires, the two brothers who quarreled all day long for the family property, have finally stopped. William IV showed a wry smile on his face and said jokingly, if Napoleon I knew that because of his mediation, the Kingdom of Prussia, after absorbing the resources of the newly unified German countries, attacked the French Empire, causing the French Empire to no longer dominate Western Europe, and Napoleon III was captured, lost the throne, and died in depression in 1873, I wonder if you would still work so hard to help Prussia reconcile? The Tsarist Russian Empire is really something. When other brothers are fighting, you help one of them. Haven't you heard that brothers are connected by blood? You beat one, and the other one was grateful at the time, but after the brothers reconciled afterwards, you were miserable. William IV sighed. Prussia's unification of Germany represents the arrival of this new era. The Netherlands needs to make more plans when facing such a powerful neighbor. William IV's eyes suddenly lit up. He thought of something, but he couldn't grasp it all of a sudden, and he was a little distressed. On January 30, 1866, after several days of negotiations, under the witness of French Prime Minister Olivier, Prussian Prime Minister Bismarck and Austrian Prime Minister Archduke Rainer Ferdinand reached an agreement in Prague. Well, the name is called the Prague Agreement. According to the agreement, the small countries that once followed the Austrian Empire to fight Prussia in the war were annexed by Prussia, and the West German Confederation joined Prussia collectively. The Duchy of Nassau in the central part stated that it would be a permanent neutral country and signed an enclave that would never be an opponent of the Kingdom of Prussia. In addition, the Austrian Empire used to control the German Confederation and was declared dissolved, so Austria lost its right to speak on the affairs of the German Confederation Empire. In other words, except for the Austrian Empire and the Duchy of Nassau, all other countries became Prussian territory, which was no different from the Austrian Empire being kicked out of the German Confederation by Prussia. Joseph I was naturally unwilling to be defeated and withdraw from the European hegemony stage. Therefore, on the second day of the aforementioned Prague Treaty, he immediately turned to Hungary, which had long been under his rule and control, and signed a compromise agreement, indicating that the Austrian Empire was willing to give Hungary more regional rights, and the title of the Austrian Empire could be shared with Hungary. So under the coercion and inducement of Joseph I, Hungary joined, originally dissatisfied, but now agreed under the more equal status of Austria. So, the Austrian Empire, which had just been defeated, suddenly turned into the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was astonishing. This surprised Napoleon III, William I and others at Austria's rapid transformation, and they had to decide that Joseph I was really good at playing. The first condition is that Austria must not interfere in Germany's internal affairs and formally dissolve the German Confederation. The second condition is that Prussia annex Schleswig and Holstein, Hanover, Hesse, Upper Hesse and the Free City of Frankfurt. The Kingdom of Saxe-Meiningen, the Duchy of Reuss-Gretz and the Duchy of Schaumburg, which were annexed by Austria, were all put into the North German Confederation established by Prussia. Austria allowed the German Confederation headed by Prussia to establish the North German Confederation in 1867. Austria must not interfere or participate. Austria ceded Venice to Italy and eastern Galicia to the Russian Empire. However, Austria retained the pro-Austrian southern Principality of Liechtenstein and allowed it to become a neutral country. This puzzled William IV. He did not understand what Joseph I meant. The Austro-Prussian War was carried out just like history, and it was completed in just 7 weeks. This is too coincidental. History was consistent again, which made William IV certain. It seems that many things are still going in the original direction, so I can rest assured. The major issues of the contemporary world cannot be solved through speeches and majority resolutions, but need to be solved with iron and blood. The Netherlands is not strong enough now. Compared with several major countries, it has technology, but the Dutch population is only 1/3 of that of Britain, France and other countries. Even if it is time to incorporate people of color and immigrants from various countries, there is still some gap. What's more, these two countries also have their own colonies of people of color. The Netherlands can only make up for the gap by making good use of these natives. The war still has to continue, and the opportunistic policy of the Netherlands still needs to continue. After Prussia and Austria just signed the Prague Treaty to end the war, especially after seeing the armies of the two countries retreat from each other, everyone thought that Central Europe was finally calm, and everyone could focus their attention completely on the Balkan Peninsula in Eastern Europe. However, everyone was wrong, and they were quite wrong. The international community was boiling, and even the Austrian people's original resentment was against Prussia, but now it has shifted to the French Empire. We reject France's request to seize Lorraine and the Rhine. With this title, the European Times published a news article based on a passage from an interview with Prussian Prime Minister Bismarck, which attracted public opinion in Austria to denounce Napoleon III of France. Bismarck said that before Prussia and Austria fought a 7-week war, France invited him to visit France, which was the one reported in the news before. Bismarck told everyone that after that time, France told Prussia that it could not be biased towards Austria, but Prussia must give up Lorraine and the Rhine region. Bismarck said that he and William I refused at that time, but France pressed on step by step, so when they faced the threat from Austria, they chose to remain silent, but did not agree. Chapter 222, Uneasy Situation Caused by the Conflict of Popularizing Law. With the end of the 7 weeks' war between Prussia and Austria, Napoleon III once again asked the French government to ask for the two regions. Prussia did not agree at the beginning, and now it has no such idea. Therefore, Bismarck chose to make public the incident in which Prussia refused to cede territory and asked Napoleon III to give up this idea. In order to prevent being accused of false accusations, Bismarck even revealed Napoleon II's original letter directly in the interview. This increased his persuasiveness. However, invisibly, Bismarck's actions completely annoyed the French Empire, especially its ruler Napoleon III. As a result, the atmosphere between France and Prussia was very solemn, and the war without gunpowder seemed to spread between the two countries. And Napoleon III became the object of ridicule in European society because of Bismarck's calculations, especially the letter scandal that was exposed, which made him the biggest victim of the trading gate. Prussia and Austrians hated him very much, and even the whole German people hated him with a common hatred. Bismarck's ability to divert attention and create an enemy to rally the internal forces is truly amazing, said the Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke in admiration. Yes, the French Empire still had some influence in the Southern German Confederation, such as the principalities of Württemberg and Baden, but now no one dares to trust him because of concerns about being betrayed, said Hubert von. If not, how could his government win the next election? But I have to say that Bismarck's self-control is extraordinary. Chief of the General Staff Mark Rutte admired, it is said that King William I of Prussia and his generals wanted to continue attacking Austria and capture Vienna. It was Bismarck's persuasion that made them stop. If not, Prussia would have overexerted itself and would have been exhausted, and would eventually have to face France and Britain, who were wary of them, and even the Russian Empire might have made trouble behind their backs. Therefore, Bismarck can be said to have mastered the self-control that he could control freely, which I admire very much. It's true that he is worthy of being the chief of the General Staff. His theories are really not exaggerated. William IV nodded secretly. Now the contradiction between Prussia and France has become public. The 5-year alliance between Prussia, France and the Netherlands, which started on February 17, 1862, is about to end next year. Foreign Minister Hubert von said, based on the current relationship between the Kingdom of Prussia and the French Empire, the renewal of the agreement agreed upon at the beginning is likely to be difficult to continue. Therefore, we need to make other plans. William IV said secretly, yes, historically, the relationship between these two countries before the Austro-Prussian War was neither good nor bad. Anyway, they kept to themselves and used each other to balance the opponents around them. But after the Austro-Prussian War, the French Empire faced the powerful and rising Prussia and regarded the other side as its opponent. Austria, which had always been regarded as an opponent, was despised by Napoleon II because of the defeat of North Prussia. So in history, it was also after 1867 that the suspicion of France and the vigilance of Prussia, combined with these two, eventually slowly led to the Franco-Prussian War that began in 1870. Thinking of this, William IV said, this alliance, which exists in name only, is now just a fig leaf. We really need to make corresponding preparations as soon as possible. Do you have any good suggestions? After a moment, Hubert von said, Your Majesty, I think France can be a good friend for us, but this country likes to do things repeatedly. In the recent coordinated foreign actions of the Triple Alliance, France always hides behind and does not contribute. This has exceeded the position of the three-nation coordination. Therefore, I think compared to the French Empire, I am more optimistic about the relationship between Prussia and the Netherlands. In other words, do you think the Netherlands should form an alliance with Prussia in the future instead of France? Hespet von hurriedly explained, Napoleon III of the French Empire is also ambitious. Compared with Prussia's current focus on the governance of the German Confederation, France has always been expanding externally, especially around. Some time ago, we took away several provinces in the south of Belgium. Now, as it was revealed, it has set its sights on those places in the German Confederation, and wants to take advantage of the opportunity. All these indicate that although Napoleon III did not succeed, he had many ideas. If the Netherlands faces such an ally in the future, we will not only have to face the opponent, but also have to face an ally who may be behind the scenes. What is the point of having an ally? Having said that, if we become enemies with France, it will not be good for the Netherlands. You know, the Netherlands borders France. With Belgium divided north and south by us, the Netherlands and France have long bordered the Duchy of Luxembourg and Limburg, Markroot said fearfully. Hespet von, but we border more with Prussia. Not to mention Limburg and Luxembourg, the Duchy of Nassau is still within the Prussian territory. Sue and Prussia have taken over the Kingdom of Hanover. The entire north and east of the Netherlands are Prussian territory. Let me ask, facing such a neighbor, why should we choose France and give up Prussia? William IV also had a headache. Markroot was thinking about the problem from a military perspective. France is not weak militarily, and has been an empire for a long time, and France has always been the hegemon of Western Europe. Prussia is a newly rising power. Moreover, taking advantage of the victory of several wars just now, it is very dangerous for the Netherlands, because they are likely to have a brain twitch, thinking that the generals who want to get more results will continue to charge and seize Prussia's governance rights. It is not uncommon for the military to suppress the government. Therefore, it is understandable that Mark Rudd would rather be a neighbor of the peaceful and civilized country of France to be on guard against Prussia. And Hespet von thinks about the problem from a diplomatic perspective. The French Empire has been domineering for a long time. It may see the threat of Prussia, and also because the Netherlands is also concerned about Prussia, so it wants to ask the Netherlands for more concessions. Diplomacy does not have direct swords and guns, but the means of hiding the front are also difficult to resist. Therefore, Hespet von would rather face France because it is easy to control, so he has some ostrich mentality. Thinking of this, William IV said, since you two have different opinions, what about Prime Minister Thorbecke? Hespet von and Mark Rudd looked at the Dutch Prime Minister when they heard this. Thorbecke said, you two, I think we don't need to make a conclusion about who to ally with and who to befriend at the moment. There is no need to set up a framework for yourself. You can jump out and think from a larger perspective. Since the alliance is about to disappear, the Netherlands needed it at the beginning. Why has the environment facing the Netherlands changed now? Prussia no longer has too many concerns. I think we can give up the alliance with them, but keep a distance from them. It is most necessary to befriend the countries around them. After all, Thorbecke said, if the Netherlands wants to emerge as a great power, then it will slowly establish its own position, so that it can be respected by various countries, instead of relying on others in the future. William IV and others were stunned. Yes, the Netherlands is not weak now, but it needs to show its strength. Thorbecke said, otherwise, Prussia and France still think that the Netherlands is easy to bully. After all, our fat meat in the Far East has been coveted for a long time. Maybe they are thinking about us giving it to them, just like the British took over our South Africa back then. Chapter 223, Major Changes Within the Russian Empire? 1866, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that Queen Alexandra, who had just given birth to Prince Albert, the eldest son of King William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, less than 3 months ago, would convene the world's first International Women's League Conference in Amsterdam, the capital of the Netherlands, on February 25, 1866. As soon as the news came out, people all over the world began to talk about it. For this alliance, many people looked at the Netherlands with suspicion after knowing the purpose. Because at present, the phenomenon of favoring boys over girls is very common all over the world, and everyone is used to the low status of women. Now that the Netherlands has suddenly come up with this, including Dutch women, they are full of doubts. Is this new Dutch queen putting on a show? Just to attract attention? Therefore, the royal families and governments of various countries stopped and chose to wait and see. President Lincoln was originally hesitating whether to send someone to participate. After all, more than a decade ago in 1848, they broke out in the United States, which was known as the world's largest women's rights march. It was a sensation around the world at that time. As women in various countries have always regarded them as the vanguard of women's rights, if they do not participate, it seems that they will not live up to this title. Secretary of State Seward, who has always opposed getting close to the Netherlands, said, "President, I don't think it is necessary to participate. After all, as everyone worries, if the Netherlands really does not play a role in this conference as everyone speculates, then those who participate will become the laughingstock of all countries. Therefore, I do not agree that the United States of America should send representatives to participate." As he finished speaking, several cabinet members who had close contacts with him also spoke out to support Seward. However, Secretary of the Interior Washburn and Secretary of the Treasury James Speed blocked Secretary of State Seward's statement. This time, the Queen of the Netherlands actually hosted such an international women's league conference dominated by women. The Netherlands is now a close partner of our Northern Federation. Mr. President, my thoughts are exactly the opposite of those of the Secretary of State. Because all countries have not yet expressed their views, it is time for us to further our relationship with the Netherlands. After all, it is better to send charcoal in the snow than to add icing on the cake. In this regard, Vice President Andrew Johnson stood on Washburn's side. This is the recent evolution of the situation within the government of the United States. President Lincoln is no longer surprised and is even secretly happy. Because Seward was once quite strong and belonged to the first faction in the cabinet, Lincoln was somewhat unable to suppress him. This time, the second largest faction leader of whose cabinet government, Vice President Andrew Johnson, and the new third faction of Washburn, united. It maintained the balance of his cabinet government. It helped him to control. Seeing Lincoln's face change with Andrew Johnson's words, Seward knew the answer. Sure enough, Lincoln finally thought of sending someone to attend the meeting held by the Queen of the Netherlands. However, there was another dispute over the candidates. The faction was not important enough, which showed that they did not attach importance to it, but where could they find enough important people to send? After all, if you want to talk to Queen Alexandra and win over the other party to continue to support the Lincoln government, you need someone whose status will not be too different from the other party. In the end, Washburn believed that only a person of the same caliber as the head of state could represent the United States of America, and Lincoln's First Lady Mary Todd was the best candidate. I think that the diplomacy of the First Lady is also a kind of national diplomacy. Sometimes, they are more effective than formal diplomacy. Therefore, I think that the First Lady's participation on behalf of all the women in the United States of America is the highest participation scale. Lincoln heard this and nodded, agreeing with this statement. On February 11, 1866, the United States of America in the North announced to the public, "We think that the International Women's League is a good idea. It can effectively improve the status of our female compatriots. For this reason, our president has decided to entrust his wife Mary Todd to represent the United States to attend the meeting and visit the Netherlands to have a private talk with Queen Alexandra." The northern United States actually participated, and Lincoln also sent his wife to participate. This news swept across the Americas and Europe. It was also a sensation. When the President of the Confederate States of the South, Davis, saw this, he convened a cabinet government meeting on the same day and finally decided to send his wife, Valena Howell, to attend the meeting, unwilling to let the North take the lead. Even the United States, which was at war with the North and the South, sent the highest-ranking female representative to attend the meeting, and the hesitation of other countries began to fade. Argentina in South America, which was on good terms with the Kingdom of the Netherlands, also sent its own delegation, obviously wanting to take a step closer. Seeing this, other countries followed suit. Even Pedro II, the Emperor of Brazil, who had a bad relationship with the Netherlands because of helping Portugal, sent his Queen Teresa Cristina to attend the meeting to ease relations with the Netherlands. However, because the Queen was a princess from the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies in Italy, it was still unknown how effective it would be. America had all been dispatched, and Europe naturally followed suit. The female members of the European royal family who attended the meeting all sent members to participate, and even the North and South of America, which were at war, sent female representatives. For example, the British royal family sent two princesses, Princess Alice and Princess Louise, to represent Queen Victoria, which was also a face giving to William IV of the Netherlands. Karl XVI of Sweden also gave face. He sent his wife, Queen Louisa from the Kingdom of the Netherlands, back to her natal home in the Netherlands to represent Swedish women. Maria Alexandrovna, the wife of Alexander II of the Russian Empire, also walked out of St. Petersburg. She represented the Russian Empire. Franz Joseph I also sent his wife, Elizabeth Eugenia, the queen of the newly established Austro-Hungarian Empire. Other countries also sent delegations. As European countries began to announce one by one that their countries had sent female representatives to attend the Amsterdam Conference, everyone was shocked. In particular, even the Kingdom of Siam in the Far East, King Rama IV, sent one of his princesses to represent him in the conference, which was a sensation in Europe. Some people even counted that this conference almost swept all the countries in Europe and the United States. Out of curiosity or other reasons, everyone who attended the conference participated with their own thoughts. Many people even later discovered that this conference was also the one with the most powerful women in the history of the International Women's League. On February 25, 1866, under the attention of the world, the young and beautiful Queen Alexandra won the recognition of female representatives from various countries with her dignified and friendly speech at the conference. Afterwards, Queen Alexandra held a separate meeting with female representatives from each country. At the meeting, she was gentle and elegant, without losing the royal majesty. With her good conversation, she became the object of admiration of these female representatives. Therefore, the Queen of the Netherlands was respected by everyone. The International Women's League also fired the most important first shot, and the international community recognized its existence. The International Women's League meeting ended, but the world's discussion on the meeting began. The Queen even surpassed her husband William IV in fame. Became the most famous person in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. This made William IV smile bitterly. However, in terms of soft power, the Netherlands finally made a good start, starting with the Queen, which set a benchmark for the Netherlands to seize more Dutch kingdom culture in other aspects in the future. What will the Netherlands rely on to attract talents in the future? It is not only about making money, nor is it just about staying away from war at the moment, but also about adding something else. The Netherlands needs to gain the favor of talents from other countries, and it must gain their recognition of Dutch culture. The female culture promoted by the Dutch Alexandra is enough to attract women around the world to think that the Netherlands is a paradise for women. We need to use this to establish more laws to protect women and protect women's rights. With the International Women's League as a pioneer, the Netherlands will gradually improve it. William IV said to the members of the Privy Council, "If the Netherlands reaches the point of gender equality in the future, I believe that all women in the world will be willing to live here, and their partners will naturally be persuaded by their pillow talk. At that time, we can selectively select immigrants, instead of hunting for talents like we do now." William IV's words made everyone silent. All couples in the world are made up of two people, and women account for half of them. If we can impress half of them, it proves that we have 150% of the chance. Women are the starting point for us to promote this conference and win their confidence. Therefore, the Netherlands must introduce more policies and laws that benefit women. Dutch women have also benefited greatly from this, and this is the issue we will focus on in the future. William IV said to Prime Minister Thorbecke, "The government formulates policies. For example, it can promote women's participation in politics, starting with local governments." Seeing the latter nodded. William IV said again, "In terms of further education, we can promote the same opportunities for women and male students. In this way, it can help men and women know about women's equal rights from an early age and help reduce discrimination." Thorbecke and others quickly took notes. William IV said, "The Dutch population is weak compared to other major countries, and we can make up for it with this. The Ministry of the Interior must effectively deal with the issue of immigrants, so that they don't want to leave when they come, and take root and become Dutch." Minister of the Interior John Earl nodded in agreement. As wars continue in Europe, there will be more and more immigrants, and the Netherlands should and must seize this opportunity to strengthen itself. William IV said, "In troubled times, one must seek stability. After these wars, war-weary countries will promote peaceful development after ending these wars. I estimate that the world may usher in decades of peaceful and stable development. At that time, countries will seek stability and will not easily leave their hometowns. Therefore, the time exposure for the Netherlands to capture these immigrants will become shorter and shorter. We hope to seize the opportunity to grow faster." Just as William IV was about to continue speaking, there was a knock on the door of the Privy Council meeting room. After obtaining William IV's permission, the chief guard hurried in with a telegram in his hand. After reading it, William IV's face changed drastically and he sighed. As I just said, our time is shorter and it is more urgent now. Just now, there was a huge change in the Russian Empire. The war in the Balkans may be over soon. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Britain is afraid of fighting. 1866, millions of people in the Russian Empire marched in St. Petersburg for an anti-war demonstration, demanding that Alexander II stop the war, rebuild the economy, give the people of the Russian Empire a better life, and that Alexander II deal with the military officials who supported the war to appease the public anger. There were also rallies in other places in the Russian Empire with varying numbers of people. The trigger for this march was the publication of a new novel, Crime and Punishment, by the famous Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky. This novel mainly describes the thought of Raskolnikov, a poor college student, who was helpless and dictatorial, and believed that he could do whatever he wanted. In order to make a living, he killed the old woman who raised the Lidate and her innocent sister Lizaveta, creating a murder case that shocked the entire Russian Empire. After a painful confession, he finally surrendered himself under the persuasion of the Christian girl Sonia and was sentenced to exile in Siberia. This work focuses on the psychological changes of the protagonist after his crime and reveals the miserable life of the lower-class people in the Russian Empire. If it were just like this, it would not be so powerful. But if there was anything to blame, it was because there were many scenes in it, all of which were related to the foreign wars of the Tsarist Russian Empire. With the support of some people, especially to instigate the relatives of the Tsarist Russian soldiers who lost their lives in the war, the scale was increased under the influence of hundreds of thousands of people. Under such circumstances, William IV, who was holding a Privy Council meeting, received the news. Only Prime Minister Thorbecke and Foreign Minister Gijsbert van Moor left. In addition to the two, there were also Bill Charley, Director of the Royal Netherlands Intelligence Agency, and Mackay Sean, Director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency. After everyone sat down, William IV asked Mackay Sean, "The parade of the Tsarist Russian Empire is too strange. More than 1 million people, that is not easy to organize. Do your people have any eyebrows in the Tsarist Russia?" Several people looked at Mackay Sean. Every move of the Tsarist Russian Empire would involve many interests of the Netherlands, especially if the political situation of the Tsarist Russian Empire was unstable, then many of the Dutch layouts would be disrupted. Especially the arms supply agreement between William IV and Alexander II. The Netherlands' support for Tsarist Russia behind the backs of other countries will be condemned by other countries, and it is even possible that the Netherlands will be hated by Tsarist Russia's opponents. Several people present have participated in many opportunities of William IV, and they know the arms alliance relationship with Tsarist Russia very well. At this stage, we have to be cautious and worried. Mackay Sean, according to the news sent back by our people there, the people who made trouble this time are a group of people who oppose the Tsarist monarchy. However, our people found that Dostoevsky, the author of this book, often traveled to and from London the year before the book was published. Britain. Gijsbert van couldn't help shouting. Prime Minister Thorbecke, who has been in politics for many years, couldn't help but change color. William IV was even more gloomy. After a moment, Gijsbert van said in a deep voice, "If this is the case, it does make sense. With the withdrawal of the Austrian Empire, Britain has been exhausted relying solely on them and the Ottoman Empire, and there are now a lot of noises in London. They are opposed to supporting the Ottoman Empire to guard against Tsarist Russia. If the war ended quickly at the beginning, it would be fine. Now that such a long time has passed, the war is not over yet, and it has even been entangled. There seems to be a risk of prolonging it. This is naturally not good for Britain, especially with the Tories eyeing it and ready to attack the ruling Whig party at any time." Thorbecke also nodded and said, "I think Viscount Palmerston is anxious this time, so he will resort to such means. However, isn't he afraid that Alexander II will retaliate against Britain after he knows it?" Bill Charley didn't speak, and neither did Mackay Sean. Obviously, the question was asked to King William IV. William IV took a deep breath, looked at them, and said, "The British general election is approaching. Britain has suffered a series of defeats in recent wars. The people want peace, but the ruling Whigs seem to be unable to see the will of the people. They have sent troops to North America and the Balkans. This has added a stain to the Whig government, which has just become a laughingstock in South Africa. Viscount Palmerston is old and wants to leave a name after his death. He wants to wash away the shame of South Africa, but the higher the hope, the greater the disappointment. More than half of the people in North America have died, and there have been many losses in the Balkan Peninsula. The Pacific Fleet was almost wiped out. Under such circumstances, if the British cabinet government led by him is still reluctant to fight, then Queen Victoria will not agree. Don't forget, only his 2 daughters came to participate in the International Women's League this time, but there are no women in the government cabinet. This is very unusual. I think this is a move by the British royal family to express their dissatisfaction with the cabinet government. Following William IV's analysis, everyone found that it was indeed the case. Your Majesty, is Britain afraid of fighting now? Yes, it just wants to leave in a dignified manner and also wants victory to be on Britain's side. At least, that's what we outsiders think. William IV said this and nodded to Bill Charlie, who said, "Ladies and gentlemen, our Royal Intelligence Agency has recently discovered that there are more and more British spies in Amsterdam. Even in the East Indies, people from the British Isles pretending to be immigrants and British people from other places have also appeared there and in Australia. We have eliminated many suspicious people around the secret bases." William IV said vigilantly, "The British have begun to probe the Netherlands. Knowing yourself and the enemy will ensure victory in every battle. The British learned the art of war from the big country in the Far East. Maybe they have begun to doubt our military strength. Therefore, next, the cabinet government will cooperate with the intelligence organizations on this issue to blind the British. The probing activities of other countries cannot be ignored, especially Belgium, Prussia, France, etc. Yes," William IV said secretly, "it is necessary to make plans for spy defense as early as possible. Britain can be said to be a pioneer in this profession. Even in later generations, they have arranged many movies and TV series to publicize their achievements and show off. The Netherlands has to guard against this. He spoke on Your Majesty, since Britain is so eager to withdraw from the war, should we stop them? I mean, should we tell His Majesty Alexander II? William IV shook his head and said, "That won't work very well. Alexander II will still consider the overall situation. In this case, we might as well help them." Seeing their curiosity, William IV began to express his thoughts. On February 25, 1866, after the Austrian Empire withdrew from the Balkan Peninsula War, the Russian Empire gradually fell into disadvantage in the war with the Russian Empire, relying on the concerns of Britain and the Ottoman Empire, especially Britain's participation in the war. On February 28, 1866, under the mediation of King William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Russian Emperor Alexander II and the newly established Austro-Hungarian Emperor Franz Joseph I went to Amsterdam for a historic meeting under the auspices of William IV. Chapter 225, Austria-Hungary is willing to give in. The meeting of the 2 great emperors of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire in Amsterdam naturally attracted the attention of countries around the world. London, Berlin, Constantinople, and even Washington, D.C., and Richmond on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean all began to pay attention. William IV looked at the 2 emperors of the European powers with big beards in front of him, and felt sick. Especially when he saw them drinking tea and pretending to be gentle, it was even more so. The 3 of them were in William IV's reception room, and there was no one else. The 3 of them spoke German. Alexander II knew many languages since he was a child, and William IV was naturally familiar with the language of the powerful neighbor next to him. As for Joseph I, he had just been kicked out of the German Confederation, so he was naturally more familiar with this language. This time, the 3 of them sat at an oblong table. William IV sat on the short side, Alexander II sat on the long side to his right, and Joseph I sat on the left. Europe respected the right, and the Russian Empire was stronger than Austria-Hungary. Therefore, Alexander II was more natural about this arrangement, and Joseph I did not object. Although William IV was acting as a mediator for the first time, he also knew that breaking the deadlock was his mission. There is a saying in the Netherlands recently, that is, it is better to let your enemy stand inside your tent and pee outside, rather than let them stand outside and pee inside the tent. William IV explained, It means that if you are familiar with your enemy, then you will be more confident that you will not be drenched by his urine, but if you are not familiar with him, it will be like standing outside the tent, making him feel unpredictable and always in danger and uneasiness. Therefore, I think the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire are both major powers in Europe, and they have been neighbors for hundreds of years. If after this war, everyone becomes the person standing outside the tent, then the people inside will be too dangerous. I suggest taking down this annoying tent to make everyone safer. What do you think? Joseph I ruled the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary as emperor since 1848, and was feared by the German Confederation. It was because of his pro-Western European stance that Nicholas I committed suicide. Therefore, after entering this reception room, he began to be very wary of Alexander II. The hatred for killing his father was an irreconcilable hatred, so he had prepared for Alexander II's attack. He secretly thought, if the Austro-Hungarian Empire had not followed Prussia in its enmity, he would not have wanted to come here. Although Alexander II had never looked at him straight in the eye from the beginning, the sharp eyes that appeared from time to time made him very uncomfortable. Obviously, the other party wanted to eat his flesh and drink his blood to relieve the hatred in his heart. Seeing that the two did not speak, William IV could only use his big move. So, he told the information that Britain might have participated in the civil strife in the Russian Empire. The two people changed color. Really? Alexander II asked. Joseph I also stared at William IV. Although it's not 100% certain, it is said that the author of Crime and Punishment has close contacts with certain people in London, and the Dutch intelligence has learned that these people have close contacts with the British MI6. You know, Viscount Palmerston has always liked to play this kind of game. Back then, the Belgians suddenly changed their reputation of disgust with the Netherlands, and eventually Belgium became independent from the Netherlands. The two were silent after hearing this. At that time, the Duchy of Belgium and the Duchy of Luxembourg were both territories of the Dutch royal palace. In 1830, they finally pushed Belgium to break away from Dutch rule, which became Viscount Palmerston's famous work in the international political arena. This shocked Europe. It was not until Viscount Palmerston led the invasion of the Qing Empire in the Far East after 1840 that it got rid of the reputation of being Palmerston's first masterpiece. William IV saw that they believed it. Compared to the situation in the Balkan Peninsula, everyone understands it, so I won't say much. I don't think it's necessary for the Russian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire to continue fighting. After all, both countries are currently facing their own difficulties. If the war drags on for too long, it will be a crisis for their respective countries. Alexander II's face changed. Regardless of whether Britain was playing tricks, it had already caused such a large scale. If it was not handled well, it was very likely that the Romanov dynasty would be overthrown. Therefore, he was actually a little anxious about it. Otherwise, he would not have traveled all the way to Amsterdam to attend this mediation meeting. Joseph I was not much better. The Austrian Empire was beaten to pieces by the Kingdom of Prussia, and the entire German Confederation was taken down by the Kingdom of Prussia. It was only after the event that it was discovered that everything seemed to have fallen into Bismarck's trap. From the beginning, Austria was calculated and used by it. In addition to being annoyed, in order to maintain the status of the empire, he could not wait to win over the Kingdom of Hungary to join and establish a dual empire. You have to know that Hungary has its own parliament and government, which is far less powerful than the Austrian Empire that was completely ruled by him before. Moreover, the population of the Kingdom of Hungary is almost the same as that of Austria. If it is, the ethnic composition of the Austro-Hungarian Empire will be too dualistic, which is not conducive to governance and full of contradictions. He naturally understands that he must first stabilize the internal situation before fighting against foreign enemies. Therefore, he participated in the Amsterdam mediation meeting this time because he realized his urgency. If he wants to maintain Austria's status as the largest ethnic group, then he must take back northern Austria and Galicia occupied by Prussia and the Russian Empire. Therefore, Joseph I sighed and looked at Alexander II, saying, "The Austro-Hungarian Empire has gradually withdrawn from the war in the Balkans. I think that the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire can completely cease fire." Alexander II snorted and wanted to say a few polite words, but he thought of something. Finally, he said, "A ceasefire is possible, but how to cease fire and how to divide the border are the key points this time." Naturally, according to the original border, Joseph I couldn't help but said. But after he finished speaking, He smiled bitterly. Because even he himself did not believe that this was possible. Sure enough, Alexander I sneered at him and said, "If that's the case, then there is no need to continue this meeting." After that, he stood up and prepared to leave. Seeing this, William IV naturally would not let him go. "Wait a minute, Your Majesty Alexander II, we have something to discuss." William IV winked at Joseph I, who moved his mouth and finally said, "Austria is willing to make concessions in other areas to compensate the loss of Galicia returned by the Tsarist Empire." Alexander I was proud in his heart, but sat back in his seat with an expressionless face and said, "How is the compensation?" End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.